Chapter 63, Damn, Hit the Wrong Person. Ling Han could not withhold a smile from turning up at the corners of his lips, and said, "Are you sure you want this seat?" "Hung, this was originally my seat," Jin Wuji said coldly. "Very well, since you want it, then I'll just let you have it." Ling Han stood up very candidly. "Pooh!" Quite a few people exclaimed in surprise. Because, there really was too big a difference between what Ling Han was doing now and what he had done just now. Previously, Ling Han had even dared to thrash the disciple of someone who excelled in sword arts and alchemy openly in front of the first prince. Yet, now he was actually scared off. It was inconceivable, it was really inconceivable. They were not the only ones who thought it was inconceivable. Lu Yutong was in complete bewilderment. Ling Han had left a very distinct impression on her. Though he may appear to be utterly calm, he was prouder than anyone else. How was it possible that he would give in to Jin Wuji's demand? If they really had to battle, she was adequate enough to face Jin Wuji. And even if the Jin clan stepped out and interfered, didn't he still have the colossal existence of Heaven's Medicine Pavilion behind him? In the whole of Rain Country, what party would dare to offend Heaven's Medicine Pavilion? None, there were definitely none. Because, this huge power did not only exist in Rain Country, but also possessed branches in the 9 countries in the desolate north, so whether it was in terms of power or wealth, it had a terrifying amount of both. Just think, when martial artists cultivate, they would definitely need the support of alchemical pills, and Heaven's Medicine Pavilion was a place where alchemical pills could be sold, so how could there be a lack of elite martial artists willing to act on their behalf? From the reverence and respect Zhu Hexian felt towards Ling Han, he had practically recognized the latter as his teacher. If the Jin clan dared to harm Ling Han, he would definitely unleash the power of the Heaven's Medicine Pavilion branch of Rain Country and obliterate the Jin clan. Since the facts were as so, then why would he need to fear? Ling Han stretched out an arm and drew Lu Yutong to himself. An enchanting blush instantly appeared on the young girl's beautiful face, and there was absolutely no hint of the icy beauty from before. Damn! When they saw this dazzling, extraordinarily beautiful maiden, everyone was filled with such irrepressible jealousy that their eyes turned red, wanting nothing more than to chop off the arm Ling Han was holding Lu Yutong with. Lu Yutong's mind had completely blanked. She only felt as if she was walking on clouds, and when she followed Ling Han to sit in one of the tables at the row further behind, even though Ling Han had long withdrawn his arm, she still had not regained her senses. Her heart was still rapidly beating. "Just wait and we'll see a good show," Ling Han said softly by her ear. Lu Yutong froze at this, and said, "What good show?" Ling Han pouted a bit, and said, "Don't forget that was something from just now had gone to get reinforcements." "You're planning to trick Jin Wuji?" Lu Yutong finally understood. Ling Han smiled and said, "I've already asked him if he really wanted that seat, and he himself agreed to it, so what does that have to do with me?" Lu Yutong could not help pursing her lips in a delicate smile, but immediately frowned, and said, "Duanmu Changfeng couldn't be that hot-headed, right? I bet he has already restrained a whole stomach's worth of anger from yesterday, and when that guo whatever returned, he'd definitely exaggerate the story, thus the old man's wrath would definitely be extraordinarily large. Moreover, when I was thrashing that guo whatever, I immediately acted without saying a single word." Ling Han laughed and said, "So, there is a high possibility that the old guy would do something like that. When that Duanmu Changfeng realizes that he has punished the wrong person, he would definitely focus on you." Lu Yutong's delicate brow wrinkled in a frown. "I think that, by that time, Zhu Hexian and Zhang Wei Shan will have already arrived. However, even if they have not, I have my own ways of dealing with that old man." Ling Han revealed a confident smile, for Zhu Hexian had told about Duanmu Changfeng to him. The old man was praised as one who excelled in sword arts and alchemy, and the sword technique that he practiced was sweeping cloud sword arts, a black-grade low-level martial arts technique. However, the old man only managed to learn 7 moves, while the complete sweeping cloud sword arts had a total of 9 moves. The book of sword arts techniques that the old guy managed to get his hands on should be a partially ruined relic, which was why he had not managed to learn the last 2 moves. Coincidentally, Ling Han possessed the complete sweeping cloud sword arts, so no matter from which angle one looked, he had the upper hand in the upcoming confrontation. Lu Yutong has definitely been badly influenced by Ling Han, and she could not withhold an expectant look from appearing on her face. Because of Ling Han's lack of moral backbone, all of the guests felt shame for sharing his company, thus no one else spoke to him. Meanwhile, Jin Wuxiang turned his head repeatedly, displaying a challenging expression to Ling Han. From his expression, he had clearly held disdain for Ling Han as well. He had originally thought that Ling Han would be stubborn, and in that way, his elder brother would definitely have an excuse to heavily injure Ling Han. He had never thought that the guy was the type to bully the weak while fearing the strong. But, do you think that you'll be able to escape just like this? Jin Wuxiang humphed coldly in his heart. Once the banquet ended and they had left the residence of the 4th prince, Jin Wuji would definitely act and ruthlessly teach Ling Han a lesson. They still had to give face to the 4th prince. Ling Han's capitulation was something that even Qi Yongyi had not thought would happen, so he too grew disdainful of Ling Han. As a result, he did not bother to waste any more time on Ling Han, and went on with his original plans, starting to persuade the other guests in hope that everyone invited would agree to support him. "Master, that's him." Not long after, a voice filled with fury was heard. Guo Dingquan had once again appeared at the entry to the main hall, and he was pointing inside. Everyone turned around at this, but they only felt their eyes blurring as a figure flew past with a terrifying speed. It was an old man dressed in a grey robe, with a sword on his back. His figure flashed by and soon appeared next to Jin Wuji. He then stretched out a hand, took hold of Jin Wuji's neck and fiercely pressed it down. Pang! The power behind this move was extremely large, and it had broken the table into 2 halves. By now, the dishes and wine had all been served, so instantly, the wine and gravy from the dishes had all splattered onto Jin Wuji's face. This was an uninvited calamity, definitely an uninvited calamity. How could Jin Wuji have imagined that someone would actually dare attack him? Moreover, his attacker was so overwhelmingly powerful that he didn't even have the ability to defend himself, and in such a confusion, suffered this kind of calamity. Ha ha ha, you were so arrogant, why don't you try being arrogant again? Guo Dingquan had raced over, and aimed a few kicks on Jin Wuji's behind. His whole face was twisted in fury, as if he wanted nothing more than to commit murder. Jin Wuxiang was initially startled, before shouting, "Why are you beating him up?" He felt very wronged. Because, all this while, the Jin brothers were always the ones who bullied others, yet today, his elder brother had actually been thrashed by 2 people they had never even met before. He didn't even manage to react in time due to shock. Guo Dingquan took one glance at him, and only felt that Jin Wuxiang was a completely unfamiliar face. It was not the icy beauty from before. Still, he did not take this disparity to heart, and only continued to kick Jin Wuji furiously. The people involved in the confrontation each had their own side. One side had misunderstood while the other side was stuck in a complete daze, but others immediately came to a realization Guo Dingquan had brought his master who excelled in both sword arts and alchemy, Duanwu Changfeng, yet had hit the wrong target. Poor Jin Wuji, he was painfully thrashed for no reason. At this moment, he had to be feeling extremely gloomy. No wonder Ling Han had yielded the seat to Jin Wuji just now. Apparently, he had already planned to lay a trap for him. Damn, this guy was really too devious. When they saw that Jin Wuji was still being thrashed while Jin Wuxiang seemed to be at a complete loss, quite a few people could not hold themselves back from laughing out loud. Moreover, the laughter was getting louder and louder, and finally spread to all the others as everyone held their stomachs and laughed raucously. Guo Dingquan too finally realized that something was wrong. He turned Jin Wuji to face him, and when he saw the unfamiliar face that was completely splattered with wine and gravy, he could not help giving a start and said, "Who are you?" "Pooh!" Jin Wuji instantly spat out a mouthful of blood in anger. "You don't even ***king know who I am, then why did you beat me up? And you had thrashed me so ferociously, even? Who had he actually offended? No matter who you people are, I will definitely have you pay the price." He roared in fury. Chapter 64, Effortlessly Controlling the Situation. "This is not the person who had thrashed you?" Duanmu Changfeng was also startled, as well as slightly displeased. "Since this wasn't the guy, then why the heck did you point at this guy the moment you came in?" "No." Guo Dingquan was also very depressed. "Since you're not Ling Han, then what the heck were you doing sitting here?" He looked at Jin Wuji and asked, "Where is the person who had been sitting here before?" Jin Wuji was not a fool, so he immediately realized. He had fallen into Ling Han's trap. This brat had offended these two people, and coincidentally, he had demanded for the brat to relinquish his seat to him. As a result, the brat took advantage of the situation to lay a trap for him, causing him to suffer horribly. That damned little beast. Ling Han. He roared loudly, "Get out here, I'm going to kill you." Ling Han. When Duanmu Changfeng heard this name, killing intent instantly appeared in his heart. This was the name of the junior who had caused him to sustain extraordinary loss of face. An old fox like him of course immediately realized that both he and Jin Wuji had been played by Ling Han. Shua, everyone's eyes turned to look at Ling Han. Ling Han was sitting upright, and even with so many people focused on him, he did not feel the slightest bit nervous. He took a sip of wine, and could not help recollecting that in his last life, all the wines he had drunk were the best quality wine. It was definitely not something this so-called excellent wine could be compared to. For the moment, Jin Wuji had no intention of getting his revenge on Guo Dingquan. Moreover, the latter had Duanmu Changfeng with him, and this was a powerful warrior of gushing spring tear whose prowess was stronger than his own by who knows how many times. He looked at Ling Han, his hands tightly gripped into fists. Gravy and blood had spilled from his wounds due to being smashed into the table covered his face. His appearance was ferocious and twisted, it could practically scare kids to tears. "Ah, you've played us," Jin Wuxiang called out, pointing at Ling Han. He had finally realized the truth. Ha ha ha. Quite a few people could not hold themselves back from laughing aloud. So the saying held true: though a dragon has 9 sons, each of them are different. This Jin Wuxiang was a complete idiot. It didn't even seem that he and Jin Wuji could have come from the same father and mother. "You are indeed extremely daring," Duanmu Changfeng said darkly. He actually dared to manipulate even himself. Looks like this little junior was really tired of living. Seeing Duanmu Changfeng speak, Jin Wuji immediately fell silent. Obviously, the former also had some kind of conflict with Ling Han, and this man was in gushing spring tear, and his status was far higher than his own as well. Even if he intended to get his own revenge, he would have to wait for his turn. Duanmu Changfeng took great strides towards Ling Han, his eyes cold. He had already decided, even if Zhu He Xian and Zhang Wei Shan both came, he would still not spare this insolent junior. Guo Dingquan followed closely, a cold smile upon his lips. This brat dared to trick even his master. He was really dead this time. Duanmu Changfeng did not walk very fast, but every step he took caused the whole main hall to shake slightly, showing the towering rage that this man, one who excelled in both sword arts and alchemy, was currently feeling. Even Qi Yongyi, as the 4th prince, dared not speak up in defense of Ling Han at this moment. What was Ling Han going to do now? His move just now was indeed very beautiful, managing to trap and trick 2 of his enemies simultaneously. However, no matter if it was Duanmu Changfeng or the Jin clan, neither was a party that could be offended without harsh consequences. Everyone felt extremely curious about his next move. Ling Han did not look at all like that kind of fool. Lu Yutong immediately stood, and assumed a defensive stance in front of Ling Han. However, she was immediately pushed lightly aside by Ling Han. Ling Han only said calmly, "The four winds rise, clouds in the heavens thrown into disorder, the tiger and crane both appear, creating invincibility." Ji. Duanmu Changfeng's advancing steps paused, and he looked as if he had been struck by a lightning bolt, wearing an expression like he had just seen a ghost. But after a short moment, he immediately looked very excited, so much in fact that even his body began shaking. This was the verbal chant for the 8th move of the Sweeping Cloud Sword Arts. The Sweeping Cloud Sword Arts was a black-grade medium-level martial arts technique. He had learned it from a secret scroll he had obtained from an ancient site. Unfortunately, due to the long passage of time, the parts showing the last 2 moves had completely deteriorated. There was only a verbal chant as well as an illustration for the 8th move, but there wasn't even a name for the 9th move left behind. The reason why he could afford to not take Zhu He Xian and Zhang Wei Shan seriously was because he possessed the Sweeping Cloud Sword Arts. The 3 of them were all in the 3rd layer of Gushing Spring tier, but because of the Sweeping Cloud Sword Arts, even if Zhu He Xian and Zhang Wei Shan joined forces, they would still be no match for him. But it was precisely because this sword arts technique was so powerful that he desired to obtain the last 2 moves even in his dreams. Thus, when Ling Han recited the verbal chant from Sweeping Cloud Sword Arts, how could he not be excited? You know it?" Duanmu Changfeng said, his voice stuttering. "Naturally." Ling Han nodded. "Will you teach me?" The old guy's face was filled with expectation. Ling Han smiled, and said, "That will depend on your performance." Duanmu Changfeng did not even spend any time to consider, and said, "Whatever request you have, just say it. Whether it is alchemical pills, or resources for cultivation, I can give them to you." See. Around them, everyone was at an absolute loss. Just now, Duanmu Changfeng seemed like he would stop at nothing in his desire to kill Ling Han, so how come his attitude changed so drastically? Was this some kind of magic trick? Master Guoding Quan had become anxious. What kind of demonic magic had this brat used? Ling Han pointed at Jin Wuji and his brother, and turned to point at Guoding Quan as well, and said, "These 3 guys, they are unpleasant to my eyes." Very well. A very experienced man like Duanmu Changfeng of course instantly understood Ling Han's meaning. He did not say another word before he lifted up Guoding Quan in one move and in a flash arrived in front of the Jin brothers. His left hand gave a shove, and a very powerful, irresistible force caused the 2 Jin brothers to fall down onto the floor. Peng 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 peng, Duanmu Changfeng kicked and punched, ravaging the 3 as much as he liked. Everyone else was completely dumbfounded. Ling Han had just said a few words that sounded like some kind of verbal chant, and Duanmu Changfeng actually became Ling Han's underling, obeying his commands. Admiration for Ling Han had risen in all of them. Whether it was Guoding Quan, the Jin brothers, or even Duanmu Changfeng, they had all been played, being in the palm of his hand. The Jin brothers were completely depressed, the depression sinking into their very bones. What great enmity or conflict did they have with Duanmu Changfeng? Previously, they had been thrashed by this old man for no reason, but that could be explained by it all being a misunderstanding due to Ling Han tricking them both. But what about this time? But since a powerful warrior of Gushing Spring tier had made his move, what else could they do other than obediently suffer the thrashing without complaints? Qi Yongye's face was twitching all over. Since the moment he saw that Ling Han had Lu Yutong accompany him, he already knew that this guy was definitely not ordinary, but to be awesome to such an extent caused even him to experience a great shock. Duanmu Changfeng was not just a warrior of Gushing Spring tier, he was also a black-grade low-level alchemist, being slightly well known in Rain Country. Even if a powerful warrior of spiritual ocean tier met him, the former would be extremely courteous and polite. But now, to put it in a coarse manner, what difference did he have with being Ling Han's underling, simply doing as the latter commanded? What happened to the dignity of an alchemist, or the moral integrity of a warrior of Gushing Spring tier? However, if he maintained a good relationship with Ling Han, did that mean he would be able to take Duanwu Changfeng under his own banner? The first prince was so excited just from being able to befriend Guoding Quan. If he managed to attract Duanwu Changfeng to his side, then his position would be incomparably steady, and no one would be able to stop him from inheriting the king's position. And thus, when Zhu Hexian and Zhang Weishan arrived at a later time, they saw such a scene. Duanwu Changfeng was thrashing his own disciple and the Jin brothers as if he had gone mad, while the person they were supposedly here to rescue, Ling Han, was leisurely sitting, drinking wine and eating. What kind of game were they playing here? Chapter 65, Summoned by the De Yuan King. Guoding Quan and the Jin brothers felt gloomy to the extreme. For Guoding Quan, master beating up his disciple was the same as a father beating his son, a law of nature, so how could he even think of avenging himself? If he did, that would fall into the crime of ingratitude and cheating his own master, and wherever he fled to, he'd be pointed out by every man. Meanwhile, the Jin brothers knew that the old man that had thrashed them was the one who excelled in sword arts and alchemy, a person who possessed extremely high status. Even when the De Yuan King met him, he'd still treat the latter with utmost courtesy and politeness, so even if the older generations of the Jin clan found out about this matter, they would still definitely not seek vengeance for them. Which means that they had suffered this thrashing for absolutely no reason. Ling Han. The three of them gritted their teeth in fury. The chief culprit behind all this was Ling Han, and he had become the object of their utmost hatred. Young friend Ling, are you all right? Zhu Hexian and Zhang Weishan had raced over, anxious expressions on their faces. I'm fine. Ling Han shook his head with a smile. Of course he's fine, everyone else thought. He played a trick on both the Jin brothers and Duanwu Changfeng, and now even Duanwu Changfeng was listening to his every command. How could he possibly not be fine? However, when they saw the two alchemists arrive and present an overwhelmingly polite demeanor towards Ling Han, they could not control their lips from twitching, and everyone was becoming even more curious about Ling Han's actual identity. Who was this guy? The heartbeat of the fourth prince had quickened as he decided to spare no effort to pull Ling Han into his own support camp. If he managed to obtain the support of 3 alchemists through Ling Han, then what else did he have to fear from a mere Lu clan? The position of the De Yuan King would definitely fall to him. Ling Han did not intend to stay any longer in this place, and so turned around to depart. Duanwu Changfeng, uncaring of his own face, followed behind him to Heaven's Medicine Pavilion. He still had to ask Ling Han for the verbal chants and illustrations for the last 2 moves of the Sweeping Cloud sword arts. Regarding this matter, Zhu Hexian and Zhang Weishan were both very shocked. They had never thought that Ling Han not only had a terrifying level of achievements in terms of alchemy, but possessed extraordinary understanding even in the field of martial arts, so much that he could even guide Duanwu Changfeng, who has been praised as one who excelled in both sword arts and alchemy. Ling Han did not go back on his word. Upon their return, he taught the missing 8th move of Sweeping Cloud sword arts to Duanwu Changfeng. As for the 9th move, he would of course not immediately teach him that last move to avoid Duanwu Changfeng abandoning his benefactor after reaching his goal. At the very least, he would wait until he himself had broken through to the Gushing Spring tier. By that time, there would be no harm to teach him the 9th move. Anyways, this was just a black-grade medium-level martial arts technique, and for Ling Han, it was completely unimportant. Duanwu Changfeng apparently understood this as well, as he excused himself shortly after obtaining the verbal chant and illustration for the 8th move. Whether he managed to get the 9th move or not would depend on his future performance. When he returned to his room, Ling Han very quickly fell asleep, and Ling Dongxing had completely no idea how big a commotion his son had created that night. None of those who had the qualifications to be invited to the fourth prince's banquet were mouthy idiots, so the news about Ling Han had only spread around in a very small circle. Early morning the next day, a servant from the royal house of the De Yuan king arrived at Heaven's Medicine Pavilion, saying that the De Yuan king had invited Ling Han over for a meeting. The De Yuan king wanted to see him. Ling Han did not have Lu Yutong follow him. He alone went with that servant to the royal house of the De Yuan king. Very soon, when they arrived at the study, he saw this local overlord. The De Yuan king was already 60 years old, but because he had a high cultivation level, he did not look old at all. On the other hand, his figure was tall and sturdy, and his whole body exuded a very powerful aura, displaying the atmosphere of a ruler. The sixth layer of spiritual ocean tier. Ling Han only took one glance, and there was no way for this man to conceal his cultivation level in front of his eyes. On the path of martial arts, every fourth and seventh layer was a different threshold. This De Yuan king should have been stuck on this layer for a very long time. Greetings, De Yuan king. Ling Han raised his clasped hands as a salutation. Rise. The De Yuan king raised his hand, and said with a smile, youngsters nowadays are really impressive. Not only managing to reach the fourth layer of element gathering tier at such a young age, you even have 3 black-grade alchemists revolving around you. Even I have not had such an honor. The De Yuan king had obviously already found out about the previous night's event. Ling Han laughed mischievously and said, I only have some slight academic attainments in alchemy, which allowed me to share a common language with Grandmaster Zhu and the others. The De Yuan king naturally would not believe Ling Han's words, yet he did not attempt to point it out bluntly. He only kept his extreme curiosity to himself, curiosity how such a genius had appeared within the area under his jurisdiction, and a genius that had 3 alchemists willingly revolving around him at that. Then what about that girl of the Lu clan? He asked with a smile. The issue about Lu Yutong couldn't be hidden from him either. If one is born handsome, he'd be popular everywhere, Ling Han said exaggeratedly. The De Yuan king pointed a bit at Ling Han, as if reprimanding him for being too slick in his speech. He changed the topic swiftly and asked, whom do you think out of my 2 sons is more suitable to inherit my position? Was it appropriate to ask him this question? Ling Han smiled, and said, the 2 princes each have their individual merits. Who exactly is more suitable? I believe that De Yuan king, your majesty, you have your own thoughts. Then what need is there for me to speak more on the subject? The De Yuan king once again broke out into loud laughter as he thought silently, this slippery kid, his argument is watertight. He once again changed the topic, and said, I have one more daughter who has yet to marry. Are you willing to become my son-in-law? Damn, were all the people from the royal house of the De Yuan king so direct? Previously, when he went to register himself for the tournament, the chief butler had also attempted some matchmaking on the spot. And now, this man, the actual father of the girl, was the same, as if he was in a hurry to marry off his daughter. Ling Han hurriedly waved his hands, and said, my heart is fully focused on martial arts, and within the next few years, I will not consider marriage. The De Yuan king could not help feeling that it was quite a pity. Even Zhu Hexian, Zhang Weishan and Duanmu Changfeng treated Ling Han with utmost respect, so obviously this young man had terrifying ability in the field of alchemy. If the latter could become his son-in-law, then he would become an unimaginable aid to their family branch. But since Ling Han had already tactfully declined the offer, as a king, he could not be so shameless as to insist. Moreover, his daughter was beautiful, so it was not like there was no one willing to marry her. If you encounter any troubles in future, you may come and ask me for help. The De Yuan king gave Ling Han a very heavy promise. Even if he could not manage to become Ling Han's father-in-law, he was still determined to maintain an affable relationship with this young man. Many thanks for your generosity. Ling Han accepted this favor with grace. After all, the current him was still too weak, so he still needed this kind of support and assistance. When he returned to Heaven's Medicine Pavilion, he discovered that the fourth prince had come to pay him a visit, and had been waiting for a very long time for his return. The fourth prince conversed with him for a very long time, but did not really say anything substantial. He was simply trying to maintain a good relationship with Ling Han. Obviously, the fourth prince knew that he was too weak to actually persuade Ling Han to join his ranks. As a result, it was only a relationship between two contemporaries, and the fourth prince didn't even hint that he intended to have Ling Han join him as an underling. On Ling Han's side, he did not mind having another friend, and so, the two of them naturally had a very delightful conversation. After resting one more day, the actual day of the De Yuan tournament had finally arrived. The first thing on the agenda was to draw lots. After confirming the 50 seated participants, the other participants would be divided into groups based on the lots they drew. They would be separated into 50 small groups, which would respectively ascend to their own tournament stage. Then the battle would begin, and the last person standing on the tournament stage would be one of the top 50 participants of this De Yuan tournament, successfully obtaining a place of enrollment into Huyang Academy. Ling Han had also obtained the place of a seated participant, and this guaranteed that in the first round of battle, he would not encounter any opponents that were too powerful. Of course, no matter how strong his opponent was, he would still hold no fear. Big Brother Ling, Li Hao and the others were standing nearby, waving at him. Chapter 66, Tournament begins. I'm done for this time. I drew the 7th group, and I heard that the seeded elite in that group is Sima Wendong. He's the strongest member in his generation of the Sima clan of De Yuan City, and he's already reached the 7th layer of element gathering tier. Lu Dong sighed, shaking his head. I'm worse off. I'm in the first group, and the seeded elite of my group is the 4th prince. I really don't have a sliver of hope left now. Zhu Shui sighed similarly, but she quickly became excited, and said, but it's possible that Li Hao may advance and obtain a spot to enroll in the academy. Ling Han glanced over at Li Hao. Within this time of over a month, he had managed to reach the late period of the 3rd layer of element gathering tier. This, of course, was due to the effects of the 3 transcending origin pills he had taken. With this kind of cultivation level, along with his saber chi, the possibility of Li Hao managing to advance was very high. After all, he had drawn the 40th something group, where the seeded elite was only in the 4th layer of element gathering tier, although a person in the 4th layer still possessed a great advantage against someone in the 3rd layer. Li Hao had saber chi, which would be more than sufficient to compensate for the gap between himself and his opponent. Additionally, the seeded elite had to face the imminent danger of being ganged up on by everyone else. As long as Li Hao was low-key enough, concealing his power for a sudden eruption at the very end, then it was very possible that he would be the one having the last laugh. Lu Dong and the others were very envious. They had also asked for Li Hao's guidance on saber chi, but no matter how much effort they exerted, they still could not manage to form chi. When we were in Guorak town, we thought we were the strongest. But it was only when we came here that we realized that the real gathering spot for geniuses was this De Yuan city. Parties like the Jin clan and the Lu clan can so easily produce 10+ seeded elites. Chen Pengju shook his head, his face filled with disappointment. He and Zhou Chang managed to break through to the element gathering tier with the help of the green spiritual fruit. However, there were so many powerful warriors gathered for the De Yuan tournament this time. If one did not at the very least possess the prowess of the 4th layer of element gathering tier, then unless he was like Li Hao who had managed to form saber chi, there was absolutely no chance of obtaining a place in the top 50. Big Brother Ling, what about you? Which group did you draw? The 5 of them looked at Ling Han in askance. They were all well aware that Ling Han was very powerful, so as long as he drew a good lot, then the chances of him being able to advance into the top 50 were extremely high. Ling Han smiled, and said, I'm the seeded participant of the 40th group. Pooh! Lu Dong and the others all choked, and they looked at Ling Han as if they were looking at some kind of monster. A few months ago, this guy had still been the same as them, also in the body refining tier, yet now, he actually managed to become a seeded elite? How could they not be shocked by such a thing? They were also filled with disbelief. You're actually in the 4th layer of element gathering tier already? Li Hao punched a fist on Ling Han's chest jokingly. But once he recalled that Ling Han had given him 2 extra transcending origin pills, and had also declared truthfully that he had more in his possession, then it was nothing strange for him to be able to advance to the 4th layer of element gathering tier in that span of time. If he's a seeded participant, then he'd be able to avoid encountering the other elites. Plus, Big Brother Ling still has sword chi, so he'd definitely be able to win. Lu Dong said, his face filled with envy. Zhu Shui and the others nodded in agreement. If you managed to enter the top 50, you'd be able to obtain a ticket into Huyang Academy, which was the dream of every martial artist in Rain Country. If they knew what had happened the night before, they'd probably be shocked to the point that their eyes would practically pop out. He actually managed to have 3 black-grade alchemists follow behind him. Ha ha ha, you want to win? That's impossible. An arrogant voice exclaimed, and a young man appeared in front of them. He was Feng Luo. Previously, after they had managed to kill the red-scaled dragon snake, he had attempted to steal the fruits of their labor. Yet, in the end, due to the final counterattack, all his underlings were killed, while he himself received a harsh thrashing at Ling Han's hands, but fortunately managed to survive. They had never thought that he would reappear so quickly with his lofty, arrogant attitude in front of them. There was absolutely no improvement to his cultivation, and he was still in the 9th layer of body refining tier. For the majority of martial artists, that one step into the element gathering tier was an extremely hard one to take. It was not strange at all to spend more than 10 years to take that single step, which was also why Heng Zhan had been so overbearing and forceful, using any means possible to steal the green spiritual fruit. Big Brother Ling is a seeded elite and he's very powerful. Why wouldn't he win? Zhu Shui asked Feng Luo. Because I am also in the 40th group. Feng Luo declared confidently. Ha ha ha. Lu Dong and the others broke out into laughter. One side was in the element gathering tier, while the other was still in the 9th layer of body refining tier. The gap between their respective prowess could really be compared to the gap between heaven and earth. No matter how it was, Feng Luo really did not have a sliver of a chance at winning. Laugh, go on and laugh. You'll be crying in the afternoon. Feng Luo spoke coldly. Lu Dong and the others were all curious. What kind of trump card was hidden up his sleeve that allowed him to have such overwhelming confidence? Ha ha ha, ha ha ha. Feng Luo laughed loudly, walking away with his head held high. Don't worry about him, he's just a nasty character. Ling Han said, smiling. The other 5 nodded in agreement. The drawing of lots was completed before noon, and they would be having the tournament stage battles in the afternoon to select the 50 strongest martial artists. After that, there would be another round of battles the next day to decide the 10 strongest as well as the first place. After lunch, everyone soon arrived at the wrestling ring in the city. There would usually be various martial arts activities held here. During the new year, when a ceremony to offer sacrifices to the gods took place, there were also martial artist versus demonic beast battles held in this location. As a result, the yellow sand of the wrestling ring had been soaked with blood since long ago. Today, because of the De Yuan tournament, all other activities and events were of course suspended. There were already 10 tournament stages put up in the gigantic sandy zone in the center. Later, there would be simultaneously 10 groups battling it out on the stages, and it would all be finished after only 5 rounds. Ling Han was the seed participant of the 40th group, so he had to wait until the 4th round to go up onto the stage. Lu Dong and Zhu Shui were in the first round. One of them was on the first tournament stage, while the other was on the 7th. There were about 70 people in one group, and the difference in numbers between different groups were in the single digits, because it was possible that there would be some who would forfeit at the last second. There was absolutely no suspense about the conclusion of the first round. All the victors were the seeded elites. They were all like the 4th prince, in the 9th layer of element gathering tier, so even if the others all joined forces to gang up on a seeded elite, they were still no match for him. Moreover, in the case of the 4th prince, who would actually dare to offend this man who may become the next Yuan king? They obviously did not dare to join forces against him. Additionally, the elites who took part in the first round were also the strongest of the 50. They were all in the top 10 of the previous Yuan tournament, like the 4th prince, Jin Wuji and Li Dongyu. Occasionally, in the second and the third round, there would be an unknown martial artist who managed to win, but victory did not fall to either Chen Pengju and Zhou Chang. The two of them were mercilessly eliminated from the tournament. Thankfully, they'd be able to get another chance 3 years later. By that time, it was highly likely that they would have managed to reach the middle stage of element gathering tier and thus become seeded elites, and so would have a bigger chance of advancing to the next round. This also confirmed the value of the green spiritual fruit. Otherwise, they may have only just reached element gathering tier 3 years later, so there'd be no second chance for them. Honor, go on. Ling Dongxing lightly patted Ling Han's shoulder, smiling brightly. The 4th round was about to begin. Half a year ago, he would have never been able to imagine that it was possible his own son to obtain the place of a seeded elite. Lu Yutong nodded to Ling Han. She did not have the slightest bit of doubt that it was possible for Ling Han to lose. As a seeded elite, Ling Han was the first person to step onto the stage, while the other participants in his group would follow after. There were about 70 of them, and Feng Luo was one of them. Begin. A warrior in Gushing Spring tier announced. He had been assigned as a referee by the royal house of the Yuan king. Ha ha ha, clear the area. Feng Luo declared proudly. Instantly, there were at least 30 people who drew their weapons simultaneously and gathered with Feng Luo protected in the center. Then, they began to push on towards the others. The audience below the stage were all dumbfounded. Was this even okay? It was really too shameless. Chapter 67, Just a Bunch of Sheep. This is too despicable. Downstage, Zhu Shui and the others had all started shouting in anger. No wonder Feng Luo had been so sure of himself. He had apparently bribed some of the martial artists in the same group to work for him. More than 30 of them were working together, and since this was the 40th group, the seeded elite would not be too strong, thus they'd be more than enough to sweep away all other contenders. Then, the others would all leave the stage of their own free will, so the remaining Feng Luo would naturally be able to obtain a place in the top 50. And he of course would not unreasonably demand to enter the top 10, and definitely not the first place. After all top 50 participants were guaranteed to be enrolled into Huyang Academy. He's too shameless. Completely unfair. All the others downstage had started calling out as well. This was an act of openly breaking the tournament regulations. Yet the referee only gave a cold humph and shouted, "Shut up." Since the tournament regulations did not specify that it was not allowed for individual martial artists to join forces, then Feng Luo's actions were of course allowed. It could at most be argued that he had managed to take advantage of a loophole in the rules. What power and influence a warrior in Gushing Spring tier possessed. All the people downstage were immediately silenced. No wonder that guy had been so confident. He had already bribed some of the others in his group, Zhu Shui said, extremely angry. To be ganged up on by so many people, plus at least more than 10 of them have already reached element gathering tier. It would be difficult for Ling Han to fight against the onslaught of so many. He's going to be in big trouble. Lu Dong frowned. Not necessarily. Li Hao shook his head, and said, Big Brother Ling should have already reached the 4th layer of element gathering tier. Furthermore, he has even formed 4 flashes of sword chi, so there is still a chance for him to win. He definitely has to win. That guy, Feng Luo, is really too despicable. The 5 of them all began to cheer Ling Han on. Compared to them, Lu Yutong and Lu Dongxing were extremely calm. A bunch of sheep working together would still only be a bunch of sheep. How could they possibly be able to match a mighty lion? Ha ha ha, leave this guy for last. Chase all the others off the stage. Feng Luo crowed, and commanded the group of more than 30 martial artists to begin wiping out the others. Their combined might was extremely powerful, and due to their cooperation, they had managed to get all the other outsiders, aside from Ling Han, off the stage, and that was with the mere price of 7 of their numbers being pulled down alongside their victims. Now, this was a battle of 29 against 1, and out of the 29, 14 were in element gathering tier. Oh no, though this brat is a seeded elite, since he's been arranged to be in the 40th group, that means that he's most likely only in the 4th layer of element gathering tier. Yeah, many ants can kill even an elephant, and the other party even has 10+ warriors in element gathering tier working for him. I really can't bear to look at that guy, Feng Luo's, expression at having his villainous scheme succeeding. Hush, lower your voices. Although the Feng clan isn't a major clan, Feng Luo's elder brother is a well-known genius in our De Yuan city. In the last round of De Yuan tournament, he managed to defeat the 4th prince to get the 1st place. I heard he's already stepped into Gushing Spring tier. What, Gushing Spring tier, is that true? Of course it's true. Hiss, no wonder that guy, Feng Luo, dares to be so arrogant. Listening to the discussions of those downstage, Feng Luo felt extremely proud of himself. He did break the rules, but so what? What, you guys can't accept this? He challenged the people downstage, bite me if you can. You can do something like this too if you have a good elder brother like me. Most of the audience offstage started gnashing their teeth in hatred. They really felt that this guy was despicable down to the bones, making them all feel the urge to rush onto the stage to give him a good thrashing. Ling Han, previously, you made use of the advantage in numbers against me, but this time, I have so many people on my side. Even if every one of them only hit you once, they'd be able to give you a terrible thrashing. If you know what's good for you, then kneel down immediately and beg me for mercy. I may even consider hitting you a few times less. Feng Luo said, pointing at Ling Han. Had it been them bullying him because of them having an advantage in numbers previously? Indeed, at the time, all his lackeys had died, while Ling Han's side had 7 people, so that was actually them bullying him because of their advantage in numbers? This guy was indeed shameless to a whole new level. Ling Han shook his head, and said, looks like if I don't hurry up and throw you off the stage and allow a clown like you to continue your performance, the fury of the masses would probably be incited. Ha ha ha, laughter broke out instantly downstage. What a hateful guy, you still dare to be so stubborn. I won't spare you. Feng Luo was driven practically mad from fury. He extended a finger and pointed at Ling Han and said, beat him, give him a good beating. Understood. The group of more than 20 people all rushed towards Ling Han. All of them were brandishing their respective weapons, presenting a fierce image. The tournament stage battles allowed the use of weapons. Otherwise, the martial artists would not be able to display their strongest abilities. However, this also increased the danger of the battles. So if you were afraid of dying, then it would be best if you quickly jumped off the stage on your own. If you stayed on the stage, then you should have a certain level of mental preparation. Ling Han did not bother to use his sword. He charged over with only his fists. Using dashing panther fists would be more than enough to handle these people. Pung, 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 pung. He charged forward and every single person who stood in his way was flung off stage with a single punch from him. One has to understand that although his cultivation level was only the 4th layer of element gathering tier, with the eruption of the 5 elements origin nuclei, his prowess could be compared with that of a normal person in the 8th layer of element gathering tier. Additionally, the dashing panther fists was a yellow-grade high-level martial arts technique, so wouldn't it be more than enough for him to single-handedly deal with these people? By the time Ling Han reached Feng Luo, all the others had been thrown off stage by him. There was absolute silence. Wasn't this guy too powerful? Since he was the seed of the 40th group, then shouldn't it be obvious that he was only in the 5th layer of element gathering tier at most? But judging from his ferocious attacks, that was definitely power that was at least of the late stage of element gathering tier. Could it be that he had deliberately hidden his actual cultivation level, pretending to be a pig to devour the tiger? However, there were naturally the older generations of the various great clans present on this occasion, so there was no lack of people with cultivation levels above the 5th layer of element gathering tier. Naturally, they managed to easily sense Ling Han's aura, and it definitely showed that he was only in the 4th layer of element gathering tier. This caused them to be confused as well. They all started murmuring amongst themselves, exchanging their thoughts about how this could be possible. No, impossible. Feng Luo said, shivering. His expression was one of complete disbelief. The script wasn't supposed to be like this. He should have successfully and easily entered into Huyang Academy. Then, with the care and assistance of his brother, easily break through to element gathering tier. If he was lucky, he'd be able to consume some kind of spiritual fruit, and may even be able to break through to gushing spring tier. But all of his plans were rendered useless if he couldn't manage to enter into Huyang Academy. Arrogant, just continue being arrogant. Ha ha ha, just continue staying on stage, if you dare. The people downstage all started taunting Feng Luo. They had already long been displeased by this guy, but just now, because he had a lot of people on his side, they didn't dare to make too much of a fuss. But what about now? Who would have imagined that Ling Han would actually be so powerful? You immediately admit defeat, then get off the stage. Otherwise, I will tell my brother to take care of you. With the taunting resounding in his ears, Feng Luo finally reacted. He actually pointed at Ling Han, and commanded him to give up. Ling Han shook his head. This guy had really been spoilt. He was a complete idiot. Pa! He leapt and aimed a kick at Feng Luo's lower abdomen. So, the guy flew off stage. He held onto his lower abdomen, gasping in pain. It even looked like he was about to tear up from the pain. 40th group, Ling Han wins. The referee announced. No. This place is mine. It's mine. When Feng Luo heard this, he actually jumped up and said to the referee, change your judgment immediately, or else I'll have my brother beat you to death. Everyone else instantly broke out into incredulous laughter. Someone merely in body refining tier actually dared to threaten a warrior of gushing spring tier. It was absolutely hilarious. Get lost. The referee gave a cold humph. He stretched out a hand and gathered his origin power to form a gigantic hand, which took hold of Feng Luo and threw him out. Chapter 68, The Second Battle. Origin power being able to take on a form, this was the symbol of a warrior of gushing spring tier. Surrounded by taunts and mocking laughter, Feng Luo fled with his tail between his legs. If it was not due to the fact that his elder brother, Feng Yan, was indeed an incomparable genius, then that warrior of gushing spring tier absolutely had the right to kill him on the spot. The most important thing in martial arts was the hierarchy of martial artists, and Feng Luo's previous actions could practically be considered a grave breach of these unspoken rules, so even if he had killed him, the Feng clan would dare not make a fuss about it. Brother Ling, congratulations. Congratulations, Brother Ling, for having such an excellent son. Brother Ling, this time you'll have to host a dinner banquet in celebration. After looking up at the stage, many of the major characters of the various clans of Grey Cloud Town began offering their congratulations to Ling Dongxing. Ling Dongxing naturally laughed loudly at this, absolutely delighted. Before, he had also imagined such a scene happening, but he knew this was not a realistic dream. He never thought that there would be a day that this dream would become reality. Ha ha ha, this stupid brat is just lucky enough to obtain a place of enrollment into Huyang Academy. There shouldn't be any chance of him advancing further than this. He shook his head, looking very modest. Actually, anyone could see that he was smiling so wide that the corners of his lips seemed like they were about to split apart from the effort. It was obvious that he was close to being beside himself with joy. True, whoever it was that had a son that was qualified enough to enter into Huyang Academy, he would also smile so proudly. Brother Ling, you don't have to be so modest. For those of us who came from Grey Cloud Town, it is already very impressive to be able to enter the top 50. Moreover, your son is only 17 years old this year. So he'd still be able to enter the De Yuan tournament that will be held 3 years later and 6 years later. Who knows, maybe in the next tournament, he'd qualify for the top 10, and in the one after, he'd place first, someone said with a laugh. Although Ling Han had fought a beautiful battle this time, but still, his opponents this time were really too weak. None of them thought that he, with his cultivation of only the 4th layer of element gathering tier, would be able to enter the top 10, let alone defeat those in the 9th layer of element gathering tier, like the 4th prince. Ling Dongxing laughed mischievously. He of course could not say that his son was full of grand ambitions, and that he was aiming directly to get the first place this time. Honestly, he too did not dare believe it. After all, the gap between cultivation levels was too great. Ling Han walked down the stage, and everyone stepped forward to offer their congratulations. After all, anyone who managed to enter into Huyang Academy had excellent prospects in his future. Who knows, they may be able to become an overnight celebrity and become a person that would hold immense status and power in this Rain country. As a result, no one would mind speaking a few words of praise at this moment. In any case, they wouldn't lose anything from it, right? And if Ling Han managed to end up with great achievements in the future, they'd be able to climb to a higher status using their friendly relations with him. Ling Dongxing, as the clan head of the Ling clan, was no stranger to this kind of social niceties. He took care of everything, making everyone feel that they have been paid adequate attention. Father and son, as well as Lu Yutong, returned to Heaven's Medicine Pavilion. After one night of rest, the battles to decide the top 10 from the 50 who advanced into the second round would take place. In truth, the top 10 would all receive rewards. Of course, the further ahead your placement, the better your prize. On the other side, Li Hao had also managed to advance into the top 50, and had demonstrated extraordinary talent with his saber chi, causing many people to be very optimistic about his future prospects, as there were no more than 10 in this generation of young people of De Yuan City that have managed to form chi. However, some of the senior members of the Li clan had arrived with Li Hao, so naturally, they had to celebrate with their own people first the night before. Thus, they did not invite Ling Han, and neither did they invite Lu Dong and the others. But once they returned to Guorok Town, the Li clan would definitely hold a grand celebratory banquet. The next day, Ling Han and Lu Yutong once again arrived at the wrestling ring of the city. Meanwhile, Zhu Hexian and Zhang Wei Shan were in the process of concocting the reverse pill, and have long since entered the oblivious mode, so they did not come to watch Ling Han compete. Big brother Ling. Li Hao walked over and stood by his side. He then directed a respectful gaze at the 4th prince, Li Dongyu and the others. They had all been people that he had once idolized and looked up to. He'd never thought that he would be able to compete with them now, causing him to feel unreasonably exhilarated. Do not look down on yourself. You have already formed Saber Chi, so your future achievements will definitely exceed them. Ling Han said, giving him a comforting pat on the shoulder. Li Hao nodded seriously. In truth, the real difference between himself and the fourth prince and the others was his lacking cultivation level. But since he's already managed to form Saber Chi, he too would be able to become a ruler amongst those of the same cultivation level in future. Brother Ling. When they saw Ling Han approach, the fourth prince and the others clasped their hands politely and spoke up in greeting. Li Hao could not help gaping at this. This Ling Han was really too popular, wasn't he? As if he was the moon which the stars could only revolve around. Even the fourth prince was not as popular as he was. That was natural. Currently, there stood 3 dignified black-grade alchemists behind him, so from a certain angle, he was even more influential than the De Yuan king. The battles to decide the top 10 will begin now. The chief butler appeared. His eyes were squinted, making him look like a doddering old man. However, his voice was extremely loud and clear, spreading to every nook and cranny of the wrestling ring. The rules are very simple. There are 10 tournament stages here. Choose any which one and walk onto the stage. If there's no one there, then you will be the stage master. If there's already someone, then you will challenge the stage master. Everyone will only have a single chance to challenge the stage master. By sundown, the 10 people who are remaining on the tournament stage will be the top 10. This was indeed very simple. They simply had to battle it out. When the chief butler had finished speaking, the majority of the participants all looked at the fourth prince, Li Dongyu, and the others. These people possessed overwhelming power, so if any of the others wanted to obtain a place in the top 10, then they'd definitely want to avoid encountering these powerful warriors. The fourth prince laughed loudly, and exuded the air of a ruler. He gave a great leap and landed on the first tournament stage, where he stood with his arms crossed behind his waist, waiting to be challenged. I'll present myself first. Li Dongyu leapt onto the second tournament stage. Jin Wuji, Bailey Tingyun, Xia Zhong and the others also respectively claimed a tournament stage, and in an instant, 7 tournament stages were owned. These people all had absolute confidence and were not the slightest bit worried that they'd be tired out by fighting one battle after another. Ling Han took one step forward, also preparing to step onto one of the remaining stages. Big brother Ling, let's just wait until the afternoon. We'll have a bigger chance that way, Li Hao hurriedly advised. It's fine. There are not many here who can match me, Ling Han gave a nonchalant wave of his hand. He gave a great leap and landed on the 8th tournament stage. Soon after, the 9th and 10th tournament stages were also occupied, and with that, the 10 stage masters have appeared. Now, it was time to see who would go up to challenge them. I'll go. Someone jumped up onto the 10th tournament stage and the first battle began. Right after, another person leapt up onto the 9th tournament stage. But what made the audience feel very curious about was that no one actually went to challenge Ling Han. There was no lack of elites in the 9th layer of element gathering tier here, so naturally they should be able to sense that Ling Han was only in the 4th layer of element gathering tier. So theoretically, this kind of cultivation level was the lowest of all 10 stage masters, but why didn't anyone go up to challenge him? They didn't understand. The majority of those who advanced into the top 50 had attended the fourth prince's banquet just a few days ago, so of course they knew that Ling Han actually had the support of 3 black-grade alchemists. Who would dare challenge him? Do you not intend to give face to the 3 alchemists behind Ling Han? In any case, aside from the fourth prince, Li Dongyu, and other such powerful warriors, there were still 2 or 3 slightly weaker competitors. So there was no need for them to stir up the hornet's nest that was Ling Han. But of course, the unexpected could still happen. I will challenge you. A young man jumped up onto Ling Han's tournament stage. He was a dark horse that had suddenly appeared in the De Yuan tournament this time, so he had not received an invitation to the fourth prince's banquet a few days ago. As a result, he naturally had no idea of Ling Han's background. Chapter 69, Top 10. My name is Du Zhengying. Remember my name, because soon, this name will be known all around the world. The young man exclaimed proudly. This man looked to be in his early 20s, and his cultivation level was the 6th layer of element gathering tier. Who knew where he got such overwhelming self-confidence from? But only he himself knew that he had only been in the 9th layer of body refining tier 2 years ago, and could not manage to break through to element gathering tier. Yet he obtained a fateful encounter, which caused his cultivation level to spike up. After only 2 years, he was already in the 6th layer of element gathering tier. After such instantaneous success, he naturally became condescending towards everything, and thought that he'd be able to reach the 9th layer of element gathering tier next year and break through to gushing spring tier in the year after, sweeping away all the other geniuses and elites of the world. Ling Han smiled calmly, and said, being too idle would be a bit boring anyways, so I'll play with you for a while. How dare you? Du Zhengying leapt forward suddenly, the long saber at his waist drawn. The light of the saber flickered, exuding a coldness like frost. He gave a loud shout and brandished his saber in a slash, which formed a terrifying cold flash that flew towards Ling Han's waist. The advantage of a sword was its lightness, while the saber had its ferocity. This saber slash was fierce and merciless, so it did have a certain level of standard. Ling Han drew his sword, and with a ding, the blade of the sword screamed as it passed over the saber's blade all the way to the hilt of the saber, easily dispersing the power of this slash as it kicked up a rain of sparks. The blade of Du Zhengying's saber stopped at a spot 3 inches below Ling Han's rib, but its energy was completely exhausted and it was no longer a threat. You do have some ability, Du Zhengying snorted coldly, but in front of me, all that is pointless effort. I'm destined to be a genius that will become world famous. Everyone else is only fated to become stepping stones on my path to advance, to be mercilessly swept away by me. He resumed his offensive. Shwa, 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 the saber flashed, striking with considerable power. Those who were standing downstage were completely struck speechless. They have seen many proud people, but Du Zhengying was not just proud anymore. He was already arrogant to the point that he didn't know his own measure. Ling Han casually parried his attacks. In any case, the tournament stage battles would only end by sundown, so there was no difference whether he defeated Du Zhengying sooner or later. Du Zhengying shouted and yelled, using all his ultimate techniques. From the look of it, he was at an absolute advantage. He naturally thought that this was to be expected. His opponent was only in the 4th layer of element gathering tier, a whole 2 layers below him, so how could Ling Han be a match for him? To be able to disregard the gap between cultivation levels and challenge one at a higher cultivation level was of course something that only he could do. Ha ha ha, not bad, not bad. I have to admit that you really are not bad. But everything will cease at this point, I'm about to get serious. Du Zhengying laughed loudly, causing everyone else to think that he was even more of an idiot than before. His expression grew serious, and he once again brandished his blade. Shwa, there actually appeared a flash of saber chi. E.N. Gasps exploded downstage all of a sudden. Saber chi. It can't be. That's the sign of a ruler. I didn't realize that this egomaniac was actually quite capable. This time, Ling Han should not be able to parry his attacks anymore. I heard that there are no more than 10 within this generation that have managed to grasp chi. Du Zhengying was very proud of himself. If it was not because he had managed to form saber chi, how would he dare keep such a high profile? He laughed loudly, and said, to be able to make me use saber chi, you should feel very honored. Ling Han shook his head and said in disappointment, you only have 1 flash of saber chi? Hey, what kind of expression is that? Isn't one flash of saber chi already very awesome? Du Zhengyi was extremely displeased. After seeing him forming saber chi, this brat was still not scared witless? It's enough to defeat you 100 times. He yelled loudly. He started brandishing his saber in a dance, and his saber chi moved unhindered. The power behind it was extremely terrifying. Ling Han laughed, and casually waved his own sword in a slash, similarly producing a flash of sword chi. Pooh! Everyone downstage choked in shock. Those who managed to form chi would have the potential to be a ruler in martial arts. But normally, 4 flashes of chi would be regarded as a minor accomplishment, 7 flashes as a major accomplishment, while 10 flashes would be completion. And only those who managed to reach the level of minor accomplishment had the right to be named as rulers. But even if only 1 flash of chi was formed, that was already a very big deal, as it was extremely rare. Thus, now that there appeared 2 people who have both managed to form chi and were even battling on the same stage, it naturally caused everyone to gasp in surprise. This was something that they had expected would only happen at tomorrow's battle, at the very least. What, you actually also have sword chi? Du Zhengying's eyes were wide with astonishment. He looked extremely shocked. Is this very odd? Ling Han said with a laugh. Hung, so what if you possess sword chi, you'll definitely still be no match for me. Du Zhengying raised his saber up high, standing in an attacking stance. The fateful encounter that he had obtained included a book of saber arts and a bottle of alchemical pills. The alchemical pills allowed him to break through to element gathering tier and also caused his cultivation to soar. The book of saber arts was also extraordinary. It contained 2 different stages. The first stage was a yellow grade high-level martial arts technique, whereas the second stage was upgraded to black grade low-level. He was only in element gathering tier, so naturally only managed to learn the first stage. Yet it already allowed him to form saber chi, which was proof enough of the extraordinary power of this saber arts technique. Cleaving mountain saber arts. He roared loudly. He brandished his saber in a slash, and the saber chi he produced looked like a dragon, extremely dazzling and possessing a terrifying level of power. Ling Han's sword rose in a slant, using the shocking electricity sword arts, and the sword chi he possessed flew forwards. Pung! Sword chi and saber chi crashed into one another and caused a sudden explosion. A dazzling light appeared, and it was visible that the saber chi was actually completely shattered by Ling Han's attack. His sword chi, like a rainbow, continued forward to cut into Du Zhengying's chest. Instantly, blood splattered. Ah! Du Zhengying gave a pained shout, and was flung directly off stage by the power of the sword chi. See! Everyone was overwhelmed with shock. Both martial artists had formed chi, yet why was there such a big gap between their respective power? There were only a few who had also managed to form chi, it was only them that knew that there were stronger and weaker chi. It was definitely not something that guaranteed you success if you just managed to form it. However, no matter how weak it was still chi, so it was impossible that it couldn't even withstand a single attack. Otherwise, it wouldn't be so difficult to form chi in the first place. That could only mean one thing: Ling Han's sword chi possessed overwhelming power. Even the 4th prince, Li Dongyu, and the other stage masters who occupied the earlier stages revealed expressions of shock. This kind of attack power caused even them to be slightly surprised. Yet they thought that their cultivation level was so much higher than Ling Han, so they absolutely could still suppress him with their much stronger prowess. Such an easy victory also caused Ling Han's image to become stronger and taller, letting everyone know that he was not as simple as simply depending on 3 alchemists as support for himself. The challenges continued. Most of the people had focused their attention on the 9th and 10th tournament stages. The stage masters of these 2 stages were the weakest and had already expended much energy during the continuous battles. This was the best path to obtain a place in the top 10 for everyone else. When the sun set, the top 10 martial artists were decided. There was not much surprise this time round, as the top 10 were mostly within expectations. Though Li Hao tried his best in his battles, his lacking cultivation level was a very solid disadvantage. The best he could do was to fight evenly with someone in the 4th layer of element gathering tier, but against a stronger person, he could only accept defeat. Ling Dongxing was again surrounded by the masses. Most of them had not thought that Ling Han could actually manage to advance into the top 10. This was an extremely huge honor. In future, he may even have a chance of becoming a powerful warrior of gushing spring tier. This naturally caused Ling Dongxing to beam with joy. When he saw that his son managed to attain such an accomplishment, he was the most delighted out of all of them. If he advanced one step further the next day, then he'd be able to get the dark moon grass. Ling Han was filled with anticipation. Chapter 70, Son of Heaven Fist Technique. The night passed silently. On the next day, the 3rd round of the De Yuan tournament continued. This was the finals, and today, the first place winner would be decided. Can Hana really get the first place? Ling Dongxing was both expectant and anxious. Before the tournament began, he believed that his son would be able to at least advance into the top 50, but dared not dream that he would also make into the top 10. After all, Ling Han's cultivation level was honestly still too low. But Ling Han's extraordinary success the previous day had been a very joyous surprise to Ling Dongxing, making a sliver of expectation for that illusory first-place rise in him. However, on the path to that first place, there stood powerful warriors like the 4th prince, Li Dongyu, and Jin Wuji. Even if he himself was the one competing, he couldn't be sure that he would win, what more his son. Initially, it was fine because he didn't really bear any real expectations. But now that a spark of hope had flickered to life within him, he had become worried about winning and losing. Lu Yutong smiled, and said, "You don't have to worry, uncle. Since Ling Han said he can get the first place, then he'll definitely get the first place." Ling Dongxing was astounded. This girl actually had more confidence in his son than even him. Looks like her affections for Ling Han have become deeply rooted. When he thought about this, he no longer bothered to worry too much about the first place. If his son could obtain such an excellent partner, then he really would die happy. The regulations for today's tournament round are as follows. The chief butler continued to be the host of the tournament. You shall go up onto the 10 tournament stages according to yesterday's order. This would be your temporary placement. Anyone who is ranked lower can challenge the person one rank higher. If you win, you will replace him. But if you lose, you can only stay on your own stage and defend, and you will no longer be able to issue any challenges. When everyone has lost the right to challenge others, or when the sun sets, your final rankings will be confirmed. After every battle, both sides will have half an hour to rest. In that time, you may only challenge, but cannot be challenged. The moment the chief butler finished talking, Li Dongyu took a great leap and arrived on the first tournament stage. He said, "4th Prince, I would like to challenge you." I too want to see if your little Tianyuan hands has advanced to the 7th level," Qi Yongyi laughed heartily. He leapt up and also arrived on the tournament stage. "It will definitely not disappoint you." Li Dongyu gave a long hiss, raised his hands and charged towards Qi Yongyi in attack. The two of them were both in the 9th layer of element gathering tier. 3 years ago, they were close rivals, but the 4th prince was slightly better. These 3 years, Li Dongyu had buried himself in cultivation, and there was an extremely obvious improvement in his abilities. "Brotherly, your improvement is indeed very large, but if I have to be honest, it was a great miscalculation on your part to stay in the Yuan city in a sulk." Qi Yongyi displayed a fist technique. Every fist was imposingly majestic, like the arrival of a noble ruler. It not only possessed great force but also the ability to shake the heart, causing a powerful shudder to rise up from the depths of their hearts. The Imperial City is the real sacred land of martial arts. There, you will encounter even stronger opponents, and every one of them is so strong that it will give you the shivers. Under this kind of pressure, the improvement in my abilities is far from what you can imagine. Take this, my son of heaven fist technique. Hong, 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 his movements were very pronounced and every fist possessed overbearing power. A layer of qi was wrapped around his fists, increasing the might behind each blow. It was fist qi. Li Dongyu was very shocked. He could only retreat in the face of Qi Yongye's fists. His expression revealed deep regret. 3 years ago, he had only been slightly weaker than Qi Yongye. After a tough battle of at least 500 moves, he had been defeated due to being at a very slight disadvantage. Yet now, the battle had only just begun, and he was already suppressed by his opponent. He didn't even have the opportunity to fight back against the fourth prince's terrifying fist technique. Peng, he received a heavy punch and his figure retreated continuously. A sliver of blood could be seen at the corners of his lips. "I am not a match for you," he said bitterly. They were both in the 9th layer of element gathering tier, yet he was not just a slight bit weaker than his opponent. His opponent was on a wholly different level than himself. This is the Son of Heaven fist technique taught to me by His Imperial Majesty. There is no shame in losing to this fist technique. Qi Yongyi smiled, giving his opponent a way out. His Imperial Majesty was a powerful warrior of spiritual pedestal tier. How could any martial arts technique that he taught not be extremely powerful? There are 4 different levels for this fist technique. The power of the first level reaches a yellow grade high level technique, the second level is a black grade low level, the third level is a black grade medium level, and the fourth level is a black grade high level martial arts technique. Qi Yongyi said with a smile, His Imperial Majesty has a fondness for talent, and there is a considerable number of geniuses in the Imperial City who have been taught the Son of Heaven fist technique. On the spectators' seats, everyone had exclaimed in surprise. The fourth prince was really too powerful. In the previous De Yuan tournament, Li Dongyu could still manage a tie with the fourth prince, but this time, he couldn't even hold on for 10 moves. They all looked at the fourth prince with envy. The fourth level of the Son of Heaven fist technique was equivalent to a black grade high level martial arts technique. If they actually managed to learn up to that level, unfortunately, although His Imperial Majesty was fond of talent, how could he possibly pass on a black grade high level martial arts technique so easily? At most, he should have only passed on the first and second level. But, a black grade low level martial arts technique was awesome enough. One has to know that even among the great clans of De Yuan City there were not many clans who had in their possession a black grade martial arts technique. How about it? Brotherly, are you interested to come with me to the Huyang Academy this time? Qi Yongyi laughed. Li Dongyu could not stop a slightly moved expression from showing on his face. The gap in power between himself and the fourth prince allowed him to finally gain his resolve. De Yuan City was too small. He had to go out of this city to be able to obtain a greater improvement. He returned to the second tournament stage, and the battles continued. However, because he had just battled, no one could challenge him yet. Jin Wuji, I would like to challenge you. From the fourth tournament stage, Bailey Tengyun gave a long hiss and leapt up onto the third tournament stage. Jin Wuji smiled serenely and crossed his arms behind his back, looking very casual. He stretched his arms a bit then said, "Then I'll give you a bit of guidance." He was also a disciple of Huyang Academy. After 3 years of hard work at cultivation, the improvement to his abilities was obvious. The only person that he took seriously among the other competitors was the fourth prince. The two of them began their battle. Bailey Tengyun was indeed extraordinary to be able to break through to the 8th layer of element gathering tier at the mere age of 17 years old. His prowess was only slightly weaker than Jin Wuji's and every move he made was powerful, causing the expressions of quite a few of the seniors in the 9th layer of element gathering tier to waver as they pondered that, if it was them battling against him, there was a possibility that they would be completely defeated. Yet Jin Wuji moved very skillfully, and with a single hand, he easily dispersed the power behind Bailey Teng Yun's every attack, showing that he possessed a power greater than his opponents. He really proves himself to have returned from Huyang Academy. He's really too powerful. They're all in the 9th layer of element gathering tier, but most of them may not be a match for 1/10 of Jin Wuji. For this tournament, we only need to look at him and the 4th prince. One of the two of them would definitely get the first place. True, there's definitely no doubt about it. Hearing the discussions of the people around him, Bailey Teng Yun gave a HN and drew a short staff from behind him. He gave it a light shake, and from both ends, there actually appeared another section. It had transformed into a staff of about 2 meters in length. It was made from some unknown kind of material. The whole staff was as black as ink. I heard that the Bailey sect has an ultimate treasure. Rumor has it that it was the weapon of an ultimate warrior, and was refined by this warrior over many days and nights. It possesses a terrifying destructive ability. Could this be it? Jin Wuji asked. Yes, this is the Staff of Destruction. Bailey Tengyun nodded and gave the staff a light wave. Wang, the black staff trembled slightly and a powerful shock wave spread out from it. Then let me experience attacks from this Staff of Destruction. Jin Wuji revealed a solemn expression. This solemnity was not because of Bailey Tengyun, but because of the Staff of Destruction. Chapter 71, Spirit Weapon. Seeing the appearance of the Staff of Destruction, even Ling Han revealed an expression of utmost seriousness. After a martial artist has reached the spiritual ocean tier, they would be able to use their own origin power to refine weapons, making the attack power of the weapon soar. The higher the cultivation level of the martial artist, the more powerful his weapon would be. For example, the weapon used by a powerful warrior of heaven tier would be able to instantly eliminate a martial artist in deity transformation tier. If I could find the weapon I used in my last life, Cloud Dragon Sword, that'd be great. I'd be invincible in the whole of Rain Country, Ling Han thought, yet quickly laughed in spite of himself. With his current cultivation level, he couldn't even get within 100 meters of Cloud Dragon Sword. If he did, then he'd definitely be directly shattered by the aura of a weapon used by a powerful warrior of heaven tier. But even if I could obtain Cloud Dragon Sword now, I wouldn't use it anyways. Otherwise, training myself in this life would lose its significance. While he had been thinking pensively, Bailey Tengyun and Jin Wuji had begun a fierce battle. The Staff of Destruction was indeed very powerful. After pouring origin power into it, a few seals actually lit up on the body of the staff. However, these seals should be covering the whole body of the staff, yet only a mere few had lit up. With the aid of the powerful Staff of Destruction, Bailey Tengyun regained his footing in the battle. But it was still very far from allowing him to gain victory. Even so, many people were still gasping in shock at the power and might of the Staff of Destruction. It truly deserves to be the weapon used by a powerful warrior. I heard that this kind of weapon is also known as Spirit Weapon. Apparently, it seems to have its own intelligence, and is able to help its user increase his battle prowess. Unfortunately, only powerful warriors that have reached spiritual ocean tier at least are able to refine these kinds of weapons. In the whole De Yuan city, only our De Yuan king has this kind of ability. So, according to you, wouldn't that mean that everyone in the royal house of the De Yuan king could have a spirit weapon of their own? How could that be possible? Firstly, this kind of weapon has to be able to sustain the origin power of a martial artist of spiritual ocean tier. Otherwise, if such powerful origin power is poured into it day and night, it'd very quickly shatter. Moreover, to produce a spirit weapon, a normal weapon would have to be nurtured by a powerful warrior of spiritual ocean tier for 20 years or more. Just think, when the De Yuan king broke through to the spiritual ocean tier, how old was he? Even if materials were sufficient, how many spirit weapons could the king forge? I see. Yet Ling Han only shook his head in disappointment. Many years ago, this staff of destruction may have been very extraordinary, but now, because of extremely severe deterioration, the spiritual seals engraved on it were almost completely destroyed. There was barely 1% of its original power remaining. However, in a place such as De Yuan City, even a ruined spirit weapon could create an extremely large commotion. After all, even the materials it was made of were extremely valuable on their own. The two young men continued exchanging blows, battling fiercely. In terms of power, Jin Wuji possessed an absolute advantage. However, Bailey Tengyun possessed a spirit weapon, even if it was a weakened one. It still allowed him to possess great power and fight with Jin Wuji on equal terms. After the two fighters had exchanged a few hundred blows, Jin Wuji still managed to claim victory due to his more plentiful experience. Meanwhile, after Bailey Tengyun had lost this battle, he could only claim the 4th place in this tournament at the very most. He was extremely dissatisfied about this kind of result, but in the minds of the others, this was already very impressive. After all, Bailey Tengyun was only 18 years old this year. Who would be able to match him in the next tournament, or the one after? However, Jin Wuji managed to win more praise and compliments. He is indeed Jin Wuji. He's really way too powerful. Even producing a spirit weapon is not enough to suppress him. Looks like Li Dongyu is no longer a match for him, but I don't know who is stronger, him or the 4th prince. If it was in the past, I would definitely think that the 4th prince is stronger, but now, I think Jin Wuji also has a very high chance of victory. Me too. After the battle with Bailey Tengyun, Jin Wuji's fame reached a whole new level. He had already surpassed Li Dongyu and was already shoulder to shoulder with the 4th prince's level. This caused Li Dongyu to feel much regret. If he had known this would happen, he would have gone to Huyang Academy 3 years ago. Jin Wuji began to regain his composure. Very soon, he would be issuing a challenge to Li Dongyu, and after that, he would be facing the 4th prince directly. The other competitors also began issuing their own challenges. Ling Han did not stay idle. Because there was a limited half an hour's time for rest, he had to make full use of his time. Otherwise, if two of the competitors ahead of him battled for too long, causing him to have to wait impatiently for the half an hour of resting time to pass, he might not have enough time to challenge all the way to the 1st place. He issued a challenge to the 7th stage master. This was a young man who looked to be about 20 years old. With a long sword strapped to his back and a tall, slender figure, he appeared very confident and at ease. The typical weapons martial artists used were either sabers or swords. But the higher the cultivation level, the weirder and rarer weapons became common as well. For example, umbrellas, pagodas, mirrors, or even pens that, with a single wave, could split rivers and break mountains, possessing terrifying power. I am Lien Tao. Please offer your guidance, Brother Ling, the young man said, clasping his hands in greeting. Please. Ling Han clasped his hands in response. Ha! Lien Tao drew his sword and it was as if the sword and the wielder had become one, flying towards Ling Han. 7th layer of element gathering tier. Ling Han fearlessly brandished his own sword in a parry. Although he was in the 4th layer of element gathering tier, with the added support of the 5 elements origin nuclei, his actual ability could be compared to the 8th layer of element gathering tier. He was no longer weaker than his opponent. Moreover, he still possessed the lone wolf's blood which could further increase his power. In terms of power, he would definitely not lose to any normal person in the 9th layer of element gathering tier. Otherwise, he would not have dared to say with such certainty and confidence that he would get the 1st place in this tournament. Ding, 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 the two of them were soon embroiled in a fierce battle. Their respective swords continuously met each other in a clash, repeatedly producing fiery sparks due to the friction between their blades. The reason why Lien Tao had been able to qualify for the top 10 was because his cultivation level was high enough. However, he could not really be considered as a genius because he had not managed to produce sword chi. The sword arts technique he was using was also only a yellow-grade low-level martial arts technique. Additionally, he had only reached the minor accomplishment level in this sword arts technique. The advantage of a high cultivation level was a stronger power, but now even the power he had gained from his cultivation level was no match for Ling Han. So how could he still possibly win? After only a few moves, he had fallen into an absolute disadvantage. There are 3 black-grade alchemists standing behind this person. Additionally, it's impossible for me to get the first place. Then there isn't much of a difference between the 7th and 8th place anyways. Why don't I do him a favor and forfeit directly? I will help him save some origin power this way. Lien Tao thought. He suddenly retreated a few steps. Withdrawing his sword, he said, I am no match for Brother Ling. I forfeit. He forfeited? Just like that? When Ling Han looked at the knowing smile on his opponent's face, understanding dawned on him. Lien Tao was deliberately doing him a favor. He could not help smiling in spite of himself. If he really had put in full effort, he would be able to instantly defeat his opponent in one move. However, whether he needed it or not, Lien Tao had still done him a favor, so he nodded in acknowledgement at Lien Tao. The two of them exchanged tournament stages. Ling Han did not rest. This battle did not expend much of his origin power, so he immediately issued a challenge to the 6th stage master. The stage master of this stage was Xia Zhongguang, a genius that had just recently emerged in the past 2 years. He was in the 8th layer of element gathering tier. Brother Ling, please. Xia Zhongguang said very politely. Although he was very proud due to his young age and had a very high opinion of himself, the fact that Ling Han had 3 black-grade alchemists behind him still caused him to obediently put away his usually arrogant attitude. Please. Ling Han replied politely. If a person treated you respectfully, so must you be respectful in response. The two of them moved at the same moment. Xia Zhongguang's weapon was a spear and he had also managed to form spear chi. When he waved his 2-meter-long spear in a dance, the might behind his movements was overbearingly powerful. It had fully displayed the unique trait of a spear, which was, the longer it was, the more powerful it was. Chapter 72, Repeatedly Throwing the Match. Ling Han used the shocking electricity sword arts, not displaying any weakness or conceding in any way. Xia Zhongguang was indeed very strong. With one wave of the spear, he actually managed to form 2 flashes of spear chi. See! A round of surprised gasps broke out downstage. 2 flashes of chi. This could be considered a very outstanding accomplishment among the younger generation of the Yuan city, especially since Xia Zhongguang was really too young. He was only 18 years old this year. By the time he had reached the current age of the 4th prince, Li Dongyu and Jin Wuji, how many flashes of qi would he be able to form? 3 flashes? Or even 4 flashes, the real sign of having stepped into the ranks of rulers? 2 flashes, huh? Ling Han smiled softly, and with a wave of his sword, 2 flashes of sword chi similarly appeared. Pooh! Everyone once again choked. They hadn't even recovered from their first shock, and here comes another. Ling Han had also managed to form the 2nd flash of sword chi. Could the Yuan city be about to emerge as a new power? One genius after another appeared in close succession. Xia Zhongguang was also extremely astonished. Indeed, he had formed the first flash of qi through hard work and effort, but the second flash was something he had obtained when he accidentally entered into an ancient tomb, where he came into contact with a strange stone plaque. He had lost consciousness at that point, and saw many memories that were now his own. After he woke up, he discovered that he had somehow formed a second flash of spear chi. Could it be that Ling Han had somehow obtained this kind of chance encounter too? If he hadn't, then he really was too terrifying. To be able to form two flashes of sword chi at the young age of 17 years old, he was practically a monster. Xia Zhongguang continued to be on the offensive for a long while, yet did not seem to be making any progress. He could not help feeling a bit dispirited, and when he recalled that Lien Tao before him, he could not help thinking, there are 3 black-grade alchemists standing behind this person, while I am obviously no match for the 4th prince. Then, what difference is there between the 6th and 7th place? Why don't I take this chance to do him a favor then? When his thoughts turned in this direction, he resolutely ceased his attack and said, Brother Ling is indeed extraordinarily strong, I forfeit. Why was there another forfeit? Weren't they obviously locked in a stalemate, with neither fighter having an advantage over the other? Aside from those few who had attended the 4th prince's banquet a few days ago, the rest was very confused. But still, Ling Han had showed that he had formed 2 flashes of sword chi in this battle, and so indeed proved that he was more powerful than Lien Tao. So Lien Tao's forfeit could be claimed as him having foresight. Could it be that Ling Han was actually even more powerful than what he had shown up to now, and that was the reason why Xia Zhongguang had simply forfeited the battle? Ling Han shook his head, smiled and said, Brother Xia is too humble. Let me offer my best wishes that Brother Ling may obtain an even better result. Let us be on closer terms in the future, please. Xia Zhongguang leapt onto the 7th tournament stage. It was at this moment that Jin Wuji too had issued a challenge, the other party being Li Dongyu. There was no suspense about the result. Within a mere 10 moves, Li Dongyu had been defeated by Jin Wuji. The longing he felt to enter into Huyang Academy also intensified with this loss. Holding on to this momentum firmly, Jin Wuji continued on to challenge the 4th prince. Ling Han had no interest in watching the battles of others. After a short rest, he continued on to challenge the 5th stage master. The 5th stage master was Lu Yu. He was also a genius that had only emerged within the last 2 years. Because these 2 big battles were ongoing at the same time, majority of the spectators went over to watch the battle between the 4th prince and Jin Wuji. Only people like Ling Dongxing, Lu Yutong and Li Hao paid attention to Ling Han's battle. Brother Ling, please. Lu Yu was also very polite. It could be argued that no one in the whole of Rain Country dared to ignore the existence of a black-grade alchemist, and there were as many as 3 such alchemists standing behind Ling Han. Please. Ling Han brandished his sword in an elaborate wave. His first move was 2 flashes of sword chi. Since he had already revealed a portion of his true prowess, he did not continue to hide it. Lu Yu could be said to be tied with Xia Zhongguang in terms of prowess. Since Xia Zhongguang was no match for Ling Han, naturally Lu Yu wasn't either. After exchanging a few tens of moves, Lu Yu could not help thinking, there are 3 black-grade alchemists standing behind this person, and in any case, I wouldn't be able to get the 1st place, so why not do him a favor? As a result, Lu Yu too very frankly forfeited. Thankfully, most of the spectators' attention had been drawn to the huge battle between the 4th prince and Jin Wuji. Otherwise, there'd definitely be suspicions about this tournament being feigned. Ling Han again rose to a higher ranking, and ahead of him only stood 4 people: Bailey Tingyun, Li Dongyu, Jin Wuji, and Qi Yongyi. Who would have thought this would happen before the tournament? Ling Dongxing could not help growing excited. If Ling Han managed to defeat Bailey Tingyun, he'd gain the right to battle with Jin Wuji and the 4th prince. Getting the 1st place was no longer a dream. The great battle between Qi Yongyi and Jin Wuji was still continuing. The 2 young geniuses both made a very powerful display. One was using palm techniques while the other was using fist techniques. They have both formed qi, and there were as many as 3 flashes on each side, so they already possessed the preliminary demeanor of a ruler. And it was at this moment that Ling Han issued a challenge to Bailey Tengyun. Ling Dongxing became even more anxious. If Ling Han emerged victorious from this battle, then he'd doubtlessly be able to defeat Li Dongyu and ascend to the 3rd place. Top 3, that was impressive enough. Could he still ask for more? Brother Ling. Bailey Tengyun was also very polite towards Ling Han. He did not even put on any airs as the young sect master of the Bailey sect. He was even friendlier than he had been with the 4th prince. After all, if the 4th prince did not manage to inherit the position of the De Yuan king, then his status could not be compared to even himself, as the 1st prince would definitely do his utmost to suppress him. But Ling Han was different. There were 3 black-grade alchemists standing behind him. Please. Please. The 2 fighters respectively spoke a word of invitation. Bailey Tengyun directly drew his staff of destruction and said, Brother Ling is very powerful. If I do not try my best, then that would be the greatest disrespect to Brother Ling. Then let me also experience the might of a spirit weapon, Ling Han said with a smile as he lightly waved the long sword in his hand, producing a soft hum. Take care then. Bailey Tengyun harnessed the black staff and charged in a ferocious attack towards Ling Han. 7 seals lit up in close succession and half a black skull appeared, pouncing towards Ling Han. This black skull contained a sliver of will of a powerful warrior. Initially, it would be able to create an invisible pressure on a martial artist in Gushing Spring tier and directly shatter the spirit of a martial artist of Element Gathering tier. However, because too much time had passed, this spirit weapon had also experienced serious deterioration. Its power had long since degraded from how it initially was, and this skull could only produce a limited effect on a martial artist of Element Gathering tier now. But if it wasn't because for that, Bailey Tengyun wouldn't have been able to wield this spirit weapon with his current strength. Though Ling Han was no longer the powerful warrior of Heaven tier he had been in the past, and there only remained a sliver of will of a warrior of Heaven tier within him, Heaven tier was still Heaven tier. Even if it was a mere sliver, it was enough to sweep away all challengers without contention. This black skull was not able to affect him the slightest bit. He used the shocking electricity sword arts. His sword was like a rainbow, ding, 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 ding. The sword and staff repeatedly clashed, creating friction. 2 flashes of sword chi moved unhindered, and there was no sign of Ling Han falling into a disadvantageous position. Quick, look there. Ling Han is having a great battle with Bailey Tengyun. What, he's actually so powerful. No wonder Xia Zhongguang and the others forfeited so fast previously. They had already known that Ling Han was so powerful. Damn, when did this kind of freak appear? He's just in the 4th layer of Element Gathering tier, and he's actually powerful to this extent. More and more people were attracted to that battle. They felt that a single pair of eyes was not enough for them. They wanted to watch the clash of the strongest between the 4th prince and Jin Wuji, but they also wanted to watch the battle of the brightest of the younger generation between Ling Han and Bailey Tengyun. Chapter 73, 4 Flashes of Sword Chi. There were only a rare few that knew that Ling Han had not yet displayed his full abilities, because he had only used 2 flashes of sword chi while his limit was actually 4. And only Ling Han knew that he had not yet stimulated Lone Wolf's blood, which would actually upgrade his battle prowess to yet another level. This was mainly because Ling Han's will was strong enough, so the influence of the Staff of Destruction on the battle was barely visible. This meant that Bailey Tengyun's attacks were mostly dependent on his own power, and he was on a lower level than Li Dongyu, so how could he possibly be a match for Ling Han? In this fierce battle and clash of the young generation, Ling Han was gradually gaining the upper hand. Hey! Hey! Even Jin Wuji hadn't had such an easy time fighting him, right? Does that mean that Ling Han is even stronger than Jin Wuji? Someone exclaimed in shock. That can't be, the power behind every one of his attacks is inferior to Jin Wuji's, so how is it possible that he's stronger than Jin Wuji? Someone else immediately retorted. But why did Jin Wuji have such a hard time during his battle, yet Ling Han so easily got the upper hand? None of them knew about the fact that the Staff of Destruction had the ability to suppress the opponent's spirit, so of course they did not understand why Ling Han could easily suppress Bailey Tingyun when his attacks were obviously on a weaker level than Jin Wuji's attacks. They were still perplexed even after much thought. Meanwhile, Bailey Tingyun had started thinking, the few people before me had obviously done Ling Han a favor. If I don't do the same, he may resent me. Moreover, I obviously can't get the first place anyways, so what difference is there between the fourth and fifth place? When his thoughts took this turn, he quickly drew his staff back and retreated. He said, Brother Ling is indeed very powerful. I forfeit. Damn, why was there another forfeit again? The spectators were just starting to get excited from watching the battle. How come this Bailey Tingyun did the same as those before him, giving up just like that? What kind of background did this Ling Han have, causing every opponent of his to do him favors like that? Ling Han stepped onto the fourth tournament stage, and he only had 3 opponents left ahead of him. Although he had expended a bit of energy battling Bailey Tingyun, he could still fight another battle. Ling Han gave a great leap and arrived on the 3rd tournament stage. Congratulations to Brother Ling for overcoming all difficulties to make it this far, Li Dongyu said to Ling Han before his expression grew serious, and he said, however, as a sign of my respect for Brother Ling, I will try my best in this battle. Please. Ling Han drew his sword and displayed a sword move in response. Li Dongyu gave a long hiss and prepared to use his little Tianyuan hands, charging towards Ling Han in attack. Although he was bare-handed, after learning this martial arts technique, once he began circulating origin power, his hands would be like finely forged iron, as firm as rock. Even sharp blades had no hope of causing injury to his hands, or at least the ordinary iron sword Ling Han was wielding had no hope of injuring his hands. Ding, 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 as the blade and the flesh of hand clashed, clanging noises continuously echoed out, and there were fiery sparks flying about from the point of contact between the hand and the blade. Li Dongyu was in the 9th layer of element gathering tier, so he exceeded both Bailey Tingyun and even Ling Han in prowess. Thus, after exchanging a few blows, Ling Han could actually feel numbness spreading through the hand he wielded his sword in. However, he had already learnt the Body of Dead Tree ability from the indestructible Heaven Scroll, so this kind of damage did not affect him in the slightest. Ling Han shook his head. Such a clash of brute force would be non-conclusive unless one of the fighters had a power advantage or both fighters were evenly matched. Even if his body was tough and indomitable due to the Body of Dead Tree skill he had learnt and thus avoided damage from the tremors caused by clashing with Li Dongyu, it was still absolutely pointless. He used the shocking electricity sword arts, and his 2 flashes of sword chi continuously danced, instantaneously turning his disadvantageous position back around. But the name of Li Dongyu was not famous from his talking big. He had managed to form 3 flashes of chi, and as his palms flew in an attack, it was obvious that his power was of a terrifying level. He had lost to Qi Yongyi and Jin Wuji previously simply because those 2 were even stronger than he was. His little Tianyuan hands was also a yellow-grade high-level martial arts technique, so Ling Han did not possess an advantage in terms of the grade of martial arts technique. In terms of power, he was weaker than Li Dongyu by a single layer of cultivation level, so faced with Li Dongyu's full power attacks, Ling Han gradually fell into a disadvantage. What's the matter? Technically, Bailey Tingyun should be stronger than Li Dongyu, right? Ling Han had an easy time against Bailey Tingyun, but why is he having such a tough time against Li Dongyu now? Could it be that Bailey Tingyun had not tried his best just now? That's definitely the case. Otherwise, how would the current situation be possible? I really am curious now. What kind of background does this Ling Han have? Why is it that all his previous opponents had deliberately allowed him to win? All of the spectators were puzzled and extremely curious. Meanwhile, Ling Dongxing was frowning deeply. His son had defeated Bailey Tengyun, so he should have been like an irresistible force, continuing his advance to obtain the third place. Yet why was he in a disadvantage now against the weaker Li Dongyu? A hint of a smile appeared on the corners of Ling Han's lips. Looks like he would have to increase his abilities. With a wave of his long sword, 4 flashes of sword chi simultaneously appeared. Pooh! This time, all spectators choked. All of them were completely struck dumb. For flashes of sword chi, he actually had 4 flashes of sword chi. One has to understand that possessing 4 flashes of sword chi could be considered as a minor accomplishment. Such a person would deserve the name of a ruler, signifying that he could be invincible among those of a certain cultivation level. A 17-year-old ruler. Ling Dongxing was both astonished and elated. He turned to Lu Yutong and asked, Honor has managed to form 4 flashes of sword chi, did you already know about this? N. Lu Yutong nodded. In truth, Ling Han had already managed to form 4 flashes of sword chi when he had only been in body refining tier. But this guy had not wanted to reveal his true talent and display his full prowess all this while. Thus, every time he revealed a bit more of his power, it was always enough to give a shock. Very good. Ling Dongxing heavily slapped his thigh, excitement filling his face. This stupid brat even kept his old man completely in the dark. See if I won't teach him a good lesson when we get back. Lu Yutong hid a smile. She knew that Ling Dongxing felt only joy now. How could he bear to reprimand Ling Han? No wonder his previous opponents had forfeited. This guy has apparently managed to form 4 flashes of sword chi. He could be named a ruler among those of the same cultivation level already. I had never really imagined that such a genius would actually emerge from within our Yuan city. That's true. Among the 36 cities of Rain Country, the martial arts level of our Yuan city has always been below average. But now there actually appeared a genius that has formed 4 flashes of sword chi from within our midst. He is indeed a source of pride for our city. When these 4 flashes of sword chi appeared, it generated a shock that spread through the whole area. Even the clash of the titans between the 4th prince and Jin Wuji had paled in comparison as more and more people were drawn over, fighting to get a look at the indomitable might of 4 flashes of sword chi. Li Dongyu's face was full of bitterness. He had worked so hard on his cultivation these 3 years. Originally, he had thought that he would be able to get the first place in the Yuan tournament this time. But he never imagined that his dreams would be shattered by the 4th prince, causing him to realize that he had fallen behind those in his age range. And now, in a generation younger than his own, there actually appeared a freak that had successfully formed 4 flashes of sword chi, causing his confidence to suffer a severe blow. However, he immediately pulled himself together. As long as he managed to enroll into Huyang Academy, then his prowess would definitely be able to advance by leaps and bounds, and he'd be able to catch up to the 4th prince and Jin Wuji. This person has a close relationship with 3 black-grade alchemists. Moreover, he's also managed to form 4 flashes of sword chi. Why don't I readily forfeit, and do him a favor? Li Dongyu thought. The others have all done him favors, so if I don't, it might not look good. When he thought this, he immediately retreated, clasped his hands and said, Brother Ling is indeed a genius to be able to form 4 flashes of sword chi at the mere age of 17. I am really deeply impressed by your achievements. There is no need to continue the battle, I forfeit. Damn! All of the spectators were depressed. This was the first time that they had seen a genius with 4 flashes of sword chi, and you actually won't fight for a bit longer, letting them enjoy watching to the fullest. Why did you forfeit so soon? Chapter 74, The Next Battle. Still, Li Dongyu forfeiting was only to be expected. After all, there had been many previous fighters who had forfeited even without any obvious signs of impending loss, so everyone was somewhat prepared that this kind of thing would happen again. Additionally, Ling Han could form 4 flashes of sword qi, which granted him invincibility amongst those of the same cultivation level, even if his cultivation level was still a bit low. "Thank you for the match," Ling Han said, clasping his hands in a polite gesture. Yet he couldn't help pondering, would all his opponents let him win all the way to the first place? As the battle between Ling Han and Li Dongyu's battle had concluded, everyone turned their attention back to the duel between the 4th prince and Jin Wuji. Both of them were young geniuses who were studying at Huyang Academy, so their respective ability was quite even. There wasn't really too big of a gap in power between the two of them. But when Qi Yongyi started to use the Son of Heaven fist technique, Jin Wuji immediately fell into a disadvantage. When the Son of Heaven appears, all shall bow. This was a kind of aura domination, and only a prince like Qi Yongyi would be able to cultivate this technique. Even if Jin Wuji learnt the same technique, it would still be useless. He did not possess the royal heritage necessary to tap into its potential. Rumor has it that stealing the divine weapon of a nation would allow the manipulation of that nation's power. It would not only speed up the rate of cultivation, but could also be used against one's enemies, increasing your own battle prowess. Looks like the rumors aren't false. Just a mere prince, and he possesses such power, Ling Han nodded to himself. The power of the nation is an ability that is equivalent to 4 flashes of sword qi. According to the slang of Rain Country, this would be the standard of a ruler. If the De Yuan king were to use this fist technique, he'd probably be able to reach approximately the level of 7 flashes of qi since he is a real noble lord. For the true ruler of the nation, he'd probably have the power equivalent to 10 flashes of qi, at the level of completion. However, qi is only the first step in martial arts. One still has to go through Ray before being able to reach the highest level, heart. Thus, cultivation ultimately still depends on the effort of the individual martial artist, Ling Han thought, yet he had to admit to be able to manipulate and make use of the power of a nation at the low level of element gathering tier and increase his individual battle prowess to a new level was already impressive enough a feat, even if it was just the tiniest part. Based on Qi Yongye's current ability, he is practically half a foot into gushing spring tier. Perhaps my little female attendant would be no match for him either. After all, she has just formed the 2nd flash of sword qi, so she still has no way to rival the might of a ruler that he possesses. If it was me, I'd definitely need to use Lone Wolf's blood to upgrade my power to the 9th layer of element gathering tier. Otherwise, would need to depend on the self-recovery ability of the indestructible Heaven Scroll and slowly wear him down. With the body of dead tree ability that I have now, my defenses are not something that a martial artist in element gathering tier can break through. I had better stick to using Lone Wolf's blood. Indestructible Heaven Scroll is my real trump card. I should avoid using it if I can. While he had been thinking pensively, the battle between Qi Yongyi and Jin Wuji was nearing its conclusion. The Son of Heaven fist technique granted Qi Yongyi the battle prowess of a ruler and allowed him to completely dominate Jin Wuji. As long as Jin Wuji himself had not yet formed 4 flashes of qi, he couldn't possibly be a match for Qi Yongyi. There's nothing to be done. Qi Yongyi had the advantage of a good, noble background, and this was something even Lu Yutong could not compare to. Pang! By the time Qi Yongyi threw his 11th punch, Jin Wuji could no longer resist and was directly flung away. With an AO, he spat out 4 consecutive mouthfuls of blood, half kneeling on the floor, no longer able to continue the battle. I have lost. Jin Wuji declared with slight reluctance. Strictly speaking, he had not lost because he was weaker, or because he was less talented. Instead, he had lost because his opponent had a better background than him. How could he not become depressed at this reality? Thank you for the match. Qi Yongyi clasped his hands politely in response. Although his victory was due to the Son of Heaven fist technique, it could have been possible only if he had learned it successfully. There were so many princes and imperial princes in Rain Country, but how many had actually successfully learned the technique? The name of genius, he bore it without guilt. However, when the two of them saw that Ling Han had actually arrived on the third tournament stage, they could not help being shocked. Previously, they had been too absorbed in their own battle, and so had not seen Ling Han's fight with Bailey Tingyun and Li Dongyu. Naturally, they had no idea that Ling Han was powerful to this extent, or even of the fact that he had formed 4 flashes of sword qi. The other stage masters had wanted to continue watching the match, but since the duel between the two greatest young rulers had concluded, they began to issue their own challenges to aim for a better placement. Doing favors for Ling Han was one thing, but if they could manage to get a better rank, who wouldn't want to try? Ling Han waited quietly. After half an hour, he would challenge Jin Wuji. Currently, the space in his dantian was still too small, and with the high-powered rotation of the 5 elements origin nuclei, his reserves of origin power got expended too quickly. After a fierce battle, he had to take alchemical pills to assist his recovery, thus this half an hour's time was also very important to him. Very soon, half an hour had passed and Ling Han leaped onto the second tournament stage to challenge this martial artist that was ranked second in this tournament. This fell into the expectations of all the spectators and they all stared with their eyes open wide, unwilling to miss a single moment. After all, this was the first genius in the whole of De Yuan City who has managed to form 4 flashes of qi. Jin Wuji had a slightly awkward expression on his face. A few days ago, he was tricked by Ling Han, leading to his public embarrassment. But when he recalled that there were 3 black-grade alchemists behind Ling Han, even if he did not abandon the thoughts of revenge, most likely those seniors of his in the Jin clan would force him to give up such a foolish venture anyway. After all, the very worst group of people you could offend in this world would be alchemists. However, such a great humiliation, how could he simply let it go just like that? Very well, you were the one who challenged me, so I can take advantage of this opportunity to teach you a lesson. As long as I don't deal you any permanent injury, no one will be able to say anything. This is, after all, a martial arts tournament. Jin Wuji thought, his gaze immediately turning sharp. Brother Ling, please offer your guidance. He clapped his palms together and his 2 hands immediately dazzled brightly like gold. This was Jin Yang Palms, a yellow-grade high-level martial arts technique. Ling Han waved his sword in a sword move, and said, please. Whoosh, Jin Wuji immediately began a powerful offense. As his palms flew in attack, a resplendent light shone. Ling Han gave a wave of his sword, and 4 flashes of sword qi immediately appeared. Since he had already revealed his abilities, then he naturally had no intention to hide his prowess any longer. What, 4 flashes of sword qi? Jin Wuji exclaimed in astonishment, his face twitching involuntarily in his shock. 4 flashes of sword qi, that was a ruler of those in the same cultivation level. Even in the imperial city, there were only a rare few who have reached the extraordinary height of possessing 4 flashes of qi, and all of them were the absolute powerhouses of the older generation. How could Jin Wuji not be extremely shocked? But he immediately realized that though there were some that were gasping and exclaiming in admiration, and some who were waving their arms and tripping over their feet in excitement, there wasn't a single expression of surprise amongst the spectators. Hey, hey, hey. This was 4 flashes of sword qi, do you guys not see this? Could it be that it was him who had seen wrongly? Jin Wuji could not help the doubts rising in his heart. After all, just how rare was achieving 4 flashes of sword qi? Even if it had appeared in the imperial city, it would be enough to create a giant commotion. Yet the people here actually appeared so calm, of course he would be confused. Naturally, he had no idea that these spectators had already experienced the same shock as he just now, so of course, there would be no such scenes as people watching wide-eyed and flabbergasted, gaping in shock and wonder. Thankfully, there was one person who gave him face and revealed an extremely shocked expression, and that, of course, was none other than Qi Yongyi. His mouth was partially open in shock, gaping at Ling Han with a completely dumbfounded expression, a faint twitch at the corners of his lips. After Jin Wuji recovered from his shock, he still persisted in his attack. So what if Ling Han had 4 flashes of sword qi? Ling Han's cultivation level was still too low after all. He would definitely not forfeit just because he had been surprised by the revelation of Ling Han's 4 flashes of sword qi. The two fighters were soon engaged in a fierce battle. Chapter 75, Battle for the Top. Jin Wuji possessed the typical power of someone at the peak period of the 9th layer of element gathering tier, and yellow-grade high-level martial arts techniques were also the most powerful techniques that could be learnt within this cultivation level. Moreover, he had also formed 2 flashes of qi, so among martial artists of element gathering tier, he was someone that was definitely close to the rank of ruler. Unfortunately, his opponent was Ling Han. 4 flashes of sword qi equated being a ruler of his cultivation level. Jin Wuji felt as if he was facing Qi Yongyi again. The only difference was that Qi Yongyi was stronger in terms of power. In other areas, Ling Han was not inferior in any way to Qi Yongyi. In fact, in terms of reaction speed and ability, he was even better than Qi Yongyi. Was this really a 17-year-old young man? Talent was indeed a terrifying thing. It wasn't until this moment that Jin Wuji finally abandoned all thoughts of vengeance. He even decided to pay a visit to Ling Han with his younger brother in tow to apologize, and dissolve the bad feelings between them once and for all. It was because Ling Han would definitely have horrifyingly high achievements in the future, and it was practically guaranteed that he would become someone that exceeded Jin Wuji. Since there was no way he could eliminate this kind of rival, then the best idea was to develop an affable relationship with the former. He could definitely not afford to make an enemy of someone of his caliber. The battle continued on and on. This time, aside from using Lone Wolf's blood and indestructible Heaven Scroll, Ling Han had used all the abilities he had on hand, allowing him to enjoy the battle to the fullest. Unfortunately, the 5 elements origin nuclei expended origin power at a very rapid pace, which would not allow him to persist for too long. It'd be great if he managed to obtain the Dark Moon Grass. It would help to expand the space in his Dantian by many times. After battling for more than 100 moves, the two of them still maintained a very evenly matched balance. Jin Wuji could not help thinking, there are 3 black-grade alchemists behind this guy, and anyways, I won't be. Similarly with those before him, he chose to deliberately throw the match and do a favor for Ling Han. This way, when he brought his brother to pay Ling Han a visit and apologize, it'd probably be easier to dissolve the remaining bad feelings between them. Brother Ling is indeed brilliant in martial arts. I forfeit. He swiftly retreated backwards, clasped his hands together and declared his forfeit. Ling Han's later momentum was already a bit lacking, and he was about to start circulating Lone Wolf's blood to defeat his opponent instantaneously. He had never imagined that Jin Wuji would actually forfeit of his own volition. Seeing the friendly signal issued by his opponent, he nodded in response and said, "Thank you for the match. Anyone can make mistakes, so it'd be wise to forgive them if it was possible." Moreover, in the first place, the conflict between himself and Jin Wuji wasn't an irresolvable feud that could not be forgiven. Sure enough, another forfeit. Could it be that among the martial arts techniques that Ling Han has learned there is one specifically geared to make his opponent forfeit? Ha ha ha, if you were as talented as Ling Han and have also formed 4 flashes of sword qi, I could also declare forfeit in front of you. Pay, how could 4 flashes of sword qi be so easily formed? The spectators felt both astonished because Ling Han actually advanced another step further and numbed as they thought that this was only a natural course of events. After all, this scene had already played many times. Thankfully, Ling Han only had one last opponent remaining, and even if Qi Yongyi forfeited too, they only needed to experience a shock one last time. Good. Ling Dongxing gripped his hands into tight fists, slightly numb with excitement. His son was able to achieve such a feat, what else could he ask for? He recalled that when his son had declared that he would obtain the first place in the tournament 2 months ago, he felt absolutely incredulous. But what about now? The first place was so close at hand. Even if he knew that Qi Yongyi was very powerful and the Son of Heaven fist technique was equivalent to 4 flashes of sword qi, as well as that his cultivation level was far above Ling Han's own, he still could not help the wild hope bursting to life within him. What if his son really managed to do the impossible? First place. Since he had already come so far, then he should definitely aim for the first place. If he didn't even issue a challenge, he would definitely regret it for the rest of his life. The other stage masters were all engaged in battle, but there were already few spectators who were still watching these battles. Everyone was waiting with bated breath for Ling Han to recover and the last battle to take place. Was it Ling Han who would be able to create another miracle, and become the greatest dark horse in this De Yuan tournament? Or would it be the 4th prince that would have the last laugh, completely leaving behind the title of second place? Ling Han had more than enough time to rest and recover, as there was no rule that specified that he had to issue a challenge after resting for half an hour. He would, of course, recover to his best condition before proceeding to challenge Qi Yongyi. Although even after a long time, Ling Han did not make any move to issue a challenge, none of the spectators rushed him into doing so, for they knew very well that only if Ling Han managed to recover to his best condition could he and the 4th prince offer the most wonderful, brilliant battle. After another hour passed, Ling Han finally stood. Here it comes. Here it comes. All of the spectators thought, immediately growing excited. 4th prince, let us battle. Ling Han jumped up onto the first tournament stage and issued a challenge to Qi Yongyi. Brother Ling, please. Qi Yongyi smiled, though he felt an urge to start cursing. After all the people before him had thrown their matches because there were 3 black grade alchemists standing behind Ling Han. Should he throw his match or not? If he threw the match, then what? The first place of this De Yuan tournament was something that he had coveted for 3 years, and the Dark Moon Grass could help him to immediately step into Gushing Spring Tier, which would save him 2 or 3 years' time of cultivation at the very least. But if he didn't, then what? The others have all thrown their matches, and you don't. Wasn't this not giving face to Ling Han? It'd be fine if it was anyone else, but Qi Yongyi had a grand ambition. He was someone who would become a famous lord, and a famous lord definitely should respect the wise and recruit talents from everywhere and anywhere. Especially with a genius like Ling Han, to enter a conflict with him was naturally something very bad. So how could Qi Yongyi not be stuck in a dilemma? Finally, Qi Yongyi still decided to do his best. If worst comes to worst, after he had commissioned the concoction of alchemical pills from the Dark Moon Grass, he'd give one to Ling Han. Please. Ling Han waved his sword, and 4 flashes of sword qi appeared. Qi Yongyi gave a loud shout and already started using the Son of Heaven fist technique. His movements were very large, as if a single punch would be able to shatter everything, even if it was a mountain that appeared in his way. What was even more terrifying was the fact that there were actually 3 layers of qi wrapped around his fists. Although the power of the nation could not simply be added onto it in a sum, but no matter how it was, its strength was still equivalent to 4 flashes of sword qi. All of the spectators gasped in shock. So it turned out that Qi Yongyi had not displayed his full abilities previously, and this was the true extent of the 4th prince's power. So powerful, how could Ling Han win against this? Even if his opponent was someone close to Gushing Spring Tier and had not yet formed qi, he wouldn't be able to match Qi Yongyi either. Pung! 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 After repeated blows from heavy fists, Ling Han fell into a continuous retreat. However, even if he withstood this kind of attack, there was absolutely no harm done to his body. Body of dead tree. Ling Han was a bit stunned. If he didn't start bleeding, how was he supposed to circulate Lone Wolf's blood? He was about to faint. So it turned out that defenses that were too strong might not necessarily be a good thing, as it actually conflicted directly with him using Lone Wolf's blood. He shouted loudly, and bit down on his tongue harshly. Immediately, a bitter taste flooded the inside of his mouth. He had finally started bleeding. Hong, the 4-5 element's origin nuclei in his body immediately began rotating even faster, suddenly allowing his power to be raised to a new level. 9th layer of element gathering tier. The higher the cultivation level, the smaller the power upgrade from Lone Wolf's blood. However, this was already enough. Ling Han brandished his iron sword, using the shocking electricity sword arts to its full extent. Ding, 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 peng, 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 peng. The two fighters were embroiled in a fierce clash as they displayed their respective prowess as much as they liked. Gods, so it turns out that element gathering tier could actually be this powerful. I'm also in the 9th layer of element gathering tier, but if I were the one fighting, I'd probably be defeated within 3 moves. If you constantly compare yourself to others, you will only make yourself angry. A new generation is soon going to replace the old generation. We're all old already. This era belongs to the young generation. Quite a number of the clan heads from Grey Cloud Town were sighing tiredly. Some of them were 30 years old, 40 years old, or even 50 years old, and they were all stuck on the cultivation level of 9th layer of element gathering tier. Because they could not manage to break through even after a very long time, they improved their own origin power to its limits with constant practice, but when facing these two young talents, they could only sigh at their own inferiority. Chapter 76, First Place. Qi Yongyi was overwhelmed with shock. Initially, he had thought that he could disregard all the so-called geniuses in this De Yuan tournament. Even if he didn't do his best, he'd still be able to easily get the first place. Things had gone according to his plan, at least they had, until he encountered the dark horse named Ling Han. Too strong. This time, he had really tried his best, yet there still was no sign of him having the upper hand. How could he not be extremely astonished at this? Ling Han was only in the 4th layer of element gathering tier, and he was already powerful to this extent. Then when he reached the 7th layer and officially stepped into the late stage of element gathering tier, how powerful would he get? He couldn't be called a genius anymore. He was a monster. Even Feng Yan hadn't been as powerful as this 3 years ago, right? Qi Yongyi involuntarily thought. In the younger generation of De Yuan City, Qi Yongyi was not the most talented one. That honor belonged to Feng Yan. 3 years ago, Feng Yan, with a cultivation level of the 9th layer of element gathering tier, ascended to the first place with an absolute dominance over Qi Yongyi. And in the tournament before that, Feng Yan, with a cultivation level of the 4th layer of element gathering tier, managed to defeat many opponents in the 9th layer of element gathering tier to obtain the first place. Even after entering Huyang Academy, where geniuses of all kinds and varieties were gathered, the brilliance of Feng Yan did not decrease in the slightest. Last year, he had already broken through to Gushing Spring tier and won a place among the top 10 strongest elites of the academy. Qi Yongyi could only manage to admire and look up to this level of achievement. Now, Qi Yongyi finally managed to see another monster who could match Feng Yan, or was perhaps even more talented than the latter was. Because, when Feng Yan had been in the 4th layer of element gathering tier, those of his opponents who were in the 9th layer were nowhere as strong as Qi Yongyi was currently. As he fiercely battled, Qi Yongyi thought that since Ling Han was so monstrously talented, he might as well help the latter establish a grand reputation and allow him to enter Huyang Academy with a glory that did not pale in comparison with Feng Yan. And by then, Feng Yan would definitely feel pressure, wouldn't he? Fine, then he will give face to Ling Han and do him a favor. Of course, if it wasn't for the fact that Ling Han was powerful enough, Qi Yongyi would definitely not deign to do this favor for Ling Han. But since Ling Han has now displayed power strong enough to match him, he'd be happy to do him this favor at such little cost to himself. After all, there was no idea what kind of heights this monster would reach in the future. He also had 3 black-grade alchemists as his support, so it wasn't a far-off dream for him to surpass Feng Yan in power. This was a character deserving of his investment. This kind of stake, he was willing to gamble on it. Brother Ling is indeed exceptional. I forfeit this battle. Qi Yongyi forfeited of his own volition. Ling Han gave a short laugh and said, this battle could only be considered a draw. His strengths were the body of dead tree ability, defenses, and a terrifyingly rapid recovery speed, while his weakness lay in the fact that the 5-element origin nuclei exhausted his reserves of origin power too quickly. Thus, he truly could not say for sure that he could defeat Qi Yongyi, thus a draw was the fairest judgment of their battle. Qi Yongyi gave a shake of his head and said, you're only in the 4th layer of element gathering tier, and you're already able to match me. If I still insist on saying this was a draw, then my skin is really too thick. After speaking, he leaped onto the second tournament stage voluntarily. Ling Han had reached the top. A clamor of shocked gasps and exclamations could be heard downstage. Although such a conclusion was not really that unpredictable, when they actually heard the 4th prince declare his own forfeit, there was still quite a number of spectators who felt that it was all unreal. 6 years ago, the most talented genius in the Yuan city of the time had overcome all the difficulties in his way and courageously won the 1st place in the tournament with a mere cultivation level of the 4th layer of element gathering tier, and now, 6 years later, a similar giant dark horse once again appeared. Was the field of martial arts in the Yuan city starting to flourish? Ling Han made no pretense of modesty, because he truly did need the prize rewarded to the 1st place winner of this tournament. Thus, he only raised his clasped hands in Qi Yongyi's direction, signifying that he would remember this favor, which he would repay tenfold in the future. At this point, there was only about half an hour left before sunset, and there remained only one tournament stage that was still battling. If the stage master won, then the heavy curtain would finally be drawn on this De Yuan tournament. If he did not, then there would have to be a bit more waiting before the end. However, there were no more surprises. Half an hour later, the rankings of the top 10 strongest was finally confirmed. 1st place, Ling Han. He really got the 1st place. He really got the 1st place. Ling Dongxing kept mumbling. Excitement and disbelief were all over his face. His son, once a publicly acknowledged trash, actually would have the day when he would become the 1st place winner in the De Yuan tournament. He finally let out a bout of uncontrollable laughter, overwhelmed with joy. The top 10 martial artists all descended from their respective tournament stages. After this, there would be a banquet held at the royal house of the De Yuan king to celebrate the success of the top 50 participants. Congratulations, Brother Ling. Congratulations. Qi Yongyi and the others all gathered around Ling Han to offer their congratulations. Thank you. Thank you. Ling Han clasped his hands politely in response. Later we definitely have to get ourselves thoroughly drunk. But of course. Let's go, let's go. Only the top 50 participants could attend the banquet. Their friends and family were not allowed to accompany them, so whether it was Ling Dongxing or Lu Yutong, neither could accompany Ling Han to the banquet. Very soon, Ling Han and the others arrived at the royal house of the De Yuan king. This was a colossal residence, at least 10 times bigger than the residence of the 4th prince. The embellishments and decorations within were all extremely extravagant and luxurious, causing quite a few young men who had come from some smaller towns to look around with gaping mouths, as if they were village boys who had managed to enter the imperial palace. The host of this banquet was the De Yuan king, and later on, he would be directly presenting the top 10 with their respective prizes. However, the De Yuan king did not stay for too long. He was a powerful warrior of spiritual ocean tier, so he needed not put on any airs at all. He only needed to take a seat and he would naturally exude a terrifying aura, causing all the others to feel a kind of pressure. After he left, the atmosphere finally became lively. All of them were young people, so very quickly, they found similar topics of conversation. Soon, they would all be heading to Huyang Academy, so naturally they all wanted to make more friends. That way, they would be able to look after each other at the academy. However, Ling Han was a bit agitated. He was waiting very impatiently for the presentation of the Dark Moon Grass, a treasure that even powerful warriors of heaven tier would feel envy over. As long as it had not entered his pocket yet, there was no way for him to set his mind at ease. When he thought about it, it was actually quite funny for him to become this impatient with his temperament. After waiting for 2 hours, this banquet finally ended, and the prizes for the top 10 were all presented to their winners, contained in small boxes. Ling Han opened his box and took a look. Inside lay a herb that was about a foot long. Each of the leaves were crescent-shaped, and their color resembled darkened moonlight. It was indeed the dark moon grass. Ling Han let out a breath in relief. He was just about to take his leave, but Qi Yongyi and the others all came over to make small talk with him, so he couldn't leave just yet. It wasn't until about midnight that the guests finally departed, and Ling Han could finally return to Heaven's Medicine Pavilion. The first thing he did was begin preparation to concoct an alchemical pill. Although the spatial pill was something that even powerful warriors of heaven tier would feel envious over, it could still be taken by martial artists of element gathering tier, so strictly speaking, it was only a yellow-grade mid-level alchemical pill. Ling Han of course was able to concoct it. He had already long since prepared all the other ingredients necessary. The only thing missing was the main ingredient, dark moon grass. Since everything was ready now, he immediately began to concoct the pill. Now that he was in element gathering tier, concoction of a yellow-grade mid-level alchemical pill was naturally a piece of cake. After only half an hour, he had successfully concocted the spatial pill. Unfortunately, there was only one. Without any hesitation, he immediately swallowed the spatial pill. He promptly sat down and waited quietly for the pill to take effect. Very quickly, there occurred a tremendous change within his body. It was as if his dantian had become an ocean where raging waves were surging. Each time the waves crashed, the space within his dantian would enlarge by a little bit. Chapter 77, 100 times. 1 time, 2 times, 3 times. The space within Ling Han's dantian continuously enlarged at a shockingly rapid pace. He felt as if his body was about to burst, but in truth, the dantian was a small world. Even if it became larger than this whole planet, no physical changes would appear on him. Ling Han, with the help of the medicinal effects from the spatial pill, stimulated the continued expansion of his dantian. At this point, every bit of increase could only be beneficial. 10 times, 20 times, 30 times. Ling Han was overwhelmed with astonishment and joy, for there was still a large amount of medicinal effects that had not yet been expended. So to what extent would this allow his dantian to expand? But when he thought longer about it, this was only normal. This was an alchemical pill that would cause even powerful warriors of heaven tier to be moved, and now it was actually taken by him, a lowly martial artist of element gathering tier, so how awesome would the effects be? Unfortunately, the people now actually don't recognize the kind of priceless treasure that was the dark moon grass, and extravagantly use it to break through to gushing spring tier. What a waste! Unfortunately, a martial artist could only take a single spatial pill once in his lifetime. If he took another, there would be no effects at all. If it had not been for this, Ling Han believed he would be able to get his hands on more dark moon grass. However, on the other hand, for most people, the spatial pill was not very valuable because rarely would they battle until the point that their origin power was completely exhausted. The increase of space within the Dantian only improved the martial artist's ability to battle longer. There was no change in the amount of power behind each attack. But for a minority of geniuses, this was an extremely valuable item, as they would often battle until the point where they had no way out. So the larger the space within their Dantian, the longer they would be able to continue battling, and on many occasions, this would be a lifesaver for them. Ling Han was of course even more pleased. He possessed the 5-element origin nuclei, and previously, the space within his Dantian was really too tiny. There was completely too little origin power for his use. 80 times, 90 times, 100 times, and finally, all the medicinal effects of the spatial pill were exhausted. Ling Han finally opened his eyes. Expanded by 100 times. If this spatial pill was swallowed by a powerful warrior of heaven tier, the space within the Dantian would only expand by 1%. However, even this single percent would be larger by 100 times than his own expansion of 100 times. There was absolutely no comparison between the two. It was not because the spatial pill was not awesome enough, but because his current cultivation level was really too low. However, with every future increase in his cultivation level, the degree of expansion of the space within his Dantian would also be much higher than others, though it would become gradually less and less, until the point where it would only be an expansion by 1% when he reached heaven tier. As a result, there was no loss in him taking the pill so early on. Instead, the earlier he took it, the earlier he could make use of it. The benefits of the spatial pill could last from element gathering tier all the way to heaven tier, or even until shattering void tier in future. He did not immediately stand up. Instead, he stimulated the 5 elements mix Chaos Lotus to continuously absorb spiritual chi, which would be transformed into his own origin power within his Dantian, building up his reserves. Though the space within his Dantian was now extremely large, the 5 elements mix Chaos Lotus was too mighty, and together with the 5 elements heaven-grade skill, absorbing and refining spiritual chi was done at an excessively rapid pace. Only one night had passed, yet he had managed to fill the colossal space within his Dantian completely. This also meant that in the future, if he battled to the point of exhaustion, he would require at least one night to recover to his prime condition if he did not take any alchemical pills to accelerate his recovery. Although he had not slept at all the night before, Ling Han still felt very energetic. After reaching element gathering tier, cultivation would be able to replace sleep to a limited extent. Moreover, he had only stayed awake for a single night, so it really wasn't a big deal. "Honor, when do you plan to return to Grey Cloud Town?" Ling Dongxing asked him when he arrived at the external rooms to eat. Ling Han considered for a moment, and said, "There is quite a number of people who have asked me to share a meal with them, and I can't really make excuses, so maybe after another 3 or 4 days." "Very well, then you stay here for a few more days while I return first and prepare a celebratory feast for you," Ling Dongxing said, filled with excitement. He couldn't wait to let all the townspeople know that Ling Han had won the first place in this De Yuan tournament. "All right, take care on your journey, father," Ling Han said with a smile. Ling Dongxing nodded. He did not worry about Ling Han, because his son's prowess was already above his own, so even if he stayed behind, he couldn't protect Ling Han anyways. Moreover, he was still the clan head, and after being absent for so long, he had to return as soon as possible to take charge of things back home. After breakfast, Ling Dongxing set out to return to Grey Cloud Town while Ling Han was dragged off by Qi Yongyi and the others to enjoy a meal here and have fun there. Because these people had all thrown their matches appropriately for him in the tournament, this was a favor, so Ling Han naturally could not be ungrateful. On the second day, Qi Yongyi invited Ling Han to have fun at the wrestling ring. What was so fun about the wrestling ring? Ling Han didn't understand, but could not resist Qi Yongyi's enthusiasm and so was dragged along by the latter there. It was also the place where the De Yuan tournament had been held a few days ago. At this moment, all the tournament stages had been dismantled, and there was only a single battle ongoing in such a wide area. 5 wrestlers were currently being surrounded in an attack by 13 demonic beasts. The battle was fierce and the scene was bloody, whereas the spectators that were watching kept releasing shouts of excitement. They are all prisoners awaiting their execution. Though the battles here are extremely dangerous, if they manage to win 10 times in a row, they would be pardoned and regain their freedom, Qi Yongyi explained. Ling Han nodded. Majority of empires had this kind of system. After prisoners were sentenced to death, they could choose to enter a battle to the death in the wrestling ring and win for themselves the chance to continue living. Of course, majority of them died in their battles. The number of people who managed to win their own freedom could be counted on the fingers of a single hand. Good. All of the spectators shouted suddenly, because one of the prisoners had made a mistake and 3 demonic beasts had worked together and ripped off his arms. The agony caused him to continuously scream in pain, but his screams did not last too long, because soon after, his throat was torn out and his flesh was divided amongst the starving demonic beasts. The spectators here have all come for this kind of death and this kind of bloody scenes. Seeing such a scene, some crazy woman even tore apart her shirt and shrieked in excitement, her breasts exposed and trembling in her emotional high. The remaining 4 did not show any sign of panic. Obviously, they have experienced such a thing many times, so they continued to rely on each other and only concentrated on the enemies right in front of them. Gambling is allowed here. Is Brother Ling interested? Qi Yongyi turned to him and asked. Ling Han shook his head in refusal. He had never had a liking for this kind of thing that used the lives of others for entertainment purposes. So Brother Ling does not like this kind of battles. To be honest, neither do I. But the battle after this would definitely be very exciting, Qi Yongyi said mysteriously. An elite of gushing spring tear who's a rapist. Who knows how many women have been ruined by his hand. But he is indeed very powerful, he has not died no matter what was done to him. Today, it would be his 1000th battle, and if he wins it, that'd be 1000 wins for him. If he wins again, there would be no choice but to set him free. A prisoner of body refining tear would be set free after winning 10 times in a row. For element gathering tear, the condition was 100 wins, while for gushing spring tear, the condition was 1000 wins. A spark of killing intent involuntarily flashed through Ling Han's eyes. Out of the types of people he hated the most, depraved lechers were in the top 3. Such scum should be directly killed without hesitation. There was no need to give them any sliver of a chance. Today, many of the spectators have come to watch this depraved lecher receive his just punishment. Qi Yongyi said, and for this reason, our royal house of the De Yuan king has even assigned an elite to battle with him. There is absolutely no way we would allow him to avoid getting his just deserts. While they had been speaking, the battle had neared its conclusion. Surrounded and attacked by more than 10 demonic beasts, after 7 demonic beasts died, the 4 prisoners were mauled to death by the remaining beasts one by one, causing the spectators watching to cheer. Everyone, before the climax event on our agenda today, we would like to invite all of you to enjoy a little program. A host entered into the ring, raised his hand and 2 iron fences on either side of the ring were raised. From behind both iron fences, an iron cage was respectively pushed out. One of the cages contained an extremely strong-looking mature wild wolf, while the other cage actually contained a little girl that could only be 5 or 6 years old at most. Ling Han suddenly stood, flames of rage bursting into life within him. Chapter 78, Wild Girl. Everyone, a team of martial artists entered the 7 Wind Mountains on a hunt a few days ago, and in the den of a fierce tiger, discovered this little girl. The strangest thing was, this little girl not only was not devoured by the fierce tiger, but had even been living with it for quite a few years. She should have been abandoned as an infant in the wild, and was brought back by the tiger to its den. The host introduced the little girl's background, pointing at her. She might look small, but she is exceptionally strong. She's also very violent, does not know how to speak, and nor does she know how to walk on two legs. Her behavior is every bit like that of a wild beast. And now, let us all watch her performance in a battle with this wild wolf. All the spectators turned their attention to the little girl. The girl had a head of unkempt hair and her whole body was filthy, covered with dust and dirt. Overall, she had a very bedraggled appearance and a very thin figure. Compared against that wild wolf, it was practically like comparing an infant with an adult. How was she supposed to battle against an opponent like that? The only end result would be being killed without mercy. Hung. Qi Yongyi had also risen to his feet, a displeased expression on his face. This was too much, to actually use such a small child to entertain the audience. They were completely without any conscience. Ling Han jumped into the wrestling ring, and said, "Release this child." Hey, hey, hey. Don't you know the rules? This is the property of the De Yuan King, how dare you come here to make trouble? The host was at first stunned, before becoming extremely angry. But soon after, he was again stunned, and pointing at Ling Han, he exclaimed, "You're the champion of this year's De Yuan tournament." After he managed to recognize Ling Han, he dared not be too rash and explained, "Young Master Ling, this is the rule of the wrestling ring. Those who enter the wrestling ring can only battle. There is no difference between male or female, old or young. Then let me ask you, has she willingly entered the battles in the wrestling ring? Or, what crime has she committed that she has no choice but to battle?" Ling Han asked. This, the host was instantly lost for words. In this world where only the strong would be respected, a wild girl would of course not engender anyone's attention. So what if she was sent to battle in the wrestling ring? Who would care? Who would mind? With this question from Ling Han, the host had no idea how he was supposed to answer. Set her free. Qi Yongyi had also leaped into the ring, and coldly commanded the host. Yes, fourth prince. The host hurriedly assented. This was a man who may very possibly inherit the position of the De Yuan King. Naturally, no one would dare to disregard the words of Qi Yongyi. Of course, he dared not release any prisoners even if it was the command of the fourth prince. However, even if she was released, this wild girl would at most not have any identification papers, and could be taken by anyone as a slave. Even if she was released, it wasn't a big deal. He ordered for the cage to be unlocked, and the little girl immediately pounced out like a cheetah. She was extremely strong, and the impact from her pouncing actually knocked down one of the workers in body refining tier. She had completely taken herself to be a wild beast. His small mouth opened, revealing two pairs of eerie, snow-white teeth, aiming a bite at that man's throat. This was completely the attack style of a fierce tiger, biting down on the throat to cut off the air supply of its prey. Ling Han quickly acted. He took hold of the little girl's neck, but the little girl instantly swiped her claws at Ling Han without any hesitation. Qi La, his sleeve was ripped open, a white mark left on Ling Han's forearm. However, he had already learned the body of dead tree ability, so while the wild girl's claws were sharp, they only managed to leave behind a few white marks on his arm. Who? The wild girl bared her white teeth at Ling Han, as if she was a fierce beast caught in a trap, looking very irritable. Ling Han looked slightly surprised, because he was in the element gathering tier and possessed extremely powerful strength. Yet if he had not gripped tightly enough and held on, this wild little girl may have successfully struggled free from his grasp. But this wild little girl was only 5 or 6 years old, so she definitely should not have awakened her spirit base yet. How then was it possible that she possessed such powerful strength? Out of curiosity, Ling Han used his consciousness to scan over her, and discovered there was actually origin power in the blood and flesh of the little girl. Unexpectedly, she really was a martial artist, and was in about the third layer of body refining tier. How was this possible? After a martial artist had awakened their spirit base, he could, with a cultivation technique, begin cultivation, absorbing spiritual chi and transforming it into origin power to refine his own blood, flesh, and bones. This was the body refining tier. Each martial artist cultivated with a cultivation technique, so naturally there would be signs of the circulation paths of his origin power left behind on the martial artist's body in accordance with the cultivation technique he was practicing. That was why a martial artist with a higher cultivation level was able to identify his opponent's cultivation level based on his circulation paths. That was also why no one had discovered that this wild little girl had the ability of the third layer of body refining tier, because there was no sign that she had cultivated before. Ling Han was different. He still possessed a sliver of the consciousness of heaven tier, and so managed to see through to the girl's essence. Could this little girl actually have a special constitution? But he had only heard of special constitutions being able to improve the owner's battle prowess, and had never heard that there was a special constitution that would aid the owner's cultivation. But if this little girl was not the descendant of those powerful races, then why had the fierce tiger adopted her? Moreover, she managed to form her own origin power without practicing any kind of cultivation technique. This was illogical no matter what, and the only explanation was that she had some kind of special constitution. True, there were so many different kinds of special constitutions in this world. How could he manage to comprehend all of them? Ling Han's expression remained unchanged. He turned and said to Qi Yongyi, "I'll bring this little girl back first and give her a good cleaning." You're not going to watch the upcoming battle?" Qi Yongyi asked strangely. The battle of a martial artist in Gushing Spring tier did not come around every day, and to those at the peak of element gathering tier, watching this kind of battle would somewhat help them in their attempt to break through to Gushing Spring tier. No, Ling Han shook his head. For him, comprehension of the different tiers was something that he had absolutely no need of. He brought the wild little girl back to Heaven's Medicine Pavilion. The girl was extremely violent. She kept trying to find chances to bite him or scratch him, so Ling Han did not dare to be too careless. After all, the little girl's teeth were really powerful. If bitten, even he would feel a little pain. One has to know that he has already learned the body of dead tree ability. Any ordinary attack not only would not be able to injure him, he wouldn't feel any bit of pain from it. He had possibly picked up a valuable treasure. Ling Han brought the little girl back to Heaven's Medicine Pavilion. Lu Yutong had not gone with him as she had been making the final bit of accumulation, preparing to break through to Gushing Spring tier. She had just walked out, and seeing the dirty little child hanging from his hand, she could not help but be surprised. "It's good that you're here. Give this little girl a bath while I go out and buy her some clothing." Ling Han threw the wild little girl to her. "But you have to be careful, this little girl is quite strong, and has very sharp teeth. If you're bitten, you'll definitely bleed." Lu Yutong's face was filled with shock. She was in the 9th layer of element gathering tier and long past body refining tier, so all the muscles in her body have been refined and became extremely tough. Only sharp weapons should be able to injure her, but now a little girl's bite could actually cause her to bleed too? But Ling Han was definitely not the type to speak nonsense, so she still very carefully took hold of the wild little girl. Ling Han went out and bought some children's clothing. By the time he returned, the wild little girl had completely changed. She was now like a lotus flower emerging from clear water, definitely a beauty in the bud. But the little girl was currently completely wrapped up in bedsheets, tied with a rope. This was not something that the strength of the 3rd layer of body refining tier could break out of, so she looked very funny. Though the little girl's appearance has completely changed and was given a gorgeous transformation, there was absolutely no decrease in her ferocity. She had still her small mouth open, growling in a low voice at Lu Yutong. Chapter 79, A Slip of the Tongue After Drinking. You really weren't kidding, this little girl's teeth are really powerful. Lu Yutong raised her left arm. Bandages were wrapped around her palm and elbow. Obviously, she had been bitten. Previously, even Ling Han had been bitten when he let his guard down, proving that this little girl was really very good at sneak attacks. More importantly, you simply wouldn't believe how fierce her teeth were unless you experienced it with your own body. This girl was definitely born in the year of the dog. Ling Han shook his head. She's much more powerful than a dog, she's definitely born in the year of the tiger. Lu Yutong had already experienced some hardship, and shook her head with lingering fear. The first time she was bitten was indeed due to her carelessness, but she had still been bitten a second time even though she had had her guard up, proving how scary this wild little girl was. Of course, this was also because she had not thought of harming the wild girl. Otherwise, no matter how sharp her teeth was, Lu Yutong would have easily killed her with one swat. Where did she come from? Lu Yutong asked curiously. She had been living in the wild, raised by a tiger. I don't know anything else besides that. Ling Han bent down in front of the wild little girl, his hand extended to tease her. Little girl, you probably don't have a name, so I'll have to give you one. Who? Who? The wild little girl kept opening and closing her mouth, her teeth clicking noisily together, as she chased after Ling Han's finger for a bite. You were raised by a tiger, so we'll call you Hunyo then. Ling Han said with a smile, then turned to Lu Yutong and asked, is there something like a birthmark on her? With that, we'll be able to help her find her real parents in the future. There is one. Lu Yutong nodded. There was a very strange mark on her ankle, though I can't tell if she was born with it or someone had marked her after her birth. Ling Han lifted the covers to take a look, and there was indeed a mark on the little girl's left ankle. It was about the size of a copper coin, with a very complicated pattern. He really could not tell what the pattern meant. Theoretically, such a complicated marking should have been branded after her birth, but there was absolutely no sign of any such branding, so it looked as if she had been born with it. It was really very odd. What do you plan for Hunyo? Lu Yutong asked. She had already started feeling affection for this little girl. This little girl only thinks that she is a wild beast. If you don't plan well enough, she will definitely get into trouble. Ling Han nodded and said, let's have her follow us first. Wait until she regains her human intelligence before we decide the next step. Hunyo did not think that she was a human being at all. She was like a wild cat or a tiger cub. They helped her put on some clothing, but she immediately ripped the clothes off her. If they did not tie her up, she would definitely be even more nimble than a monkey. What was even more of a headache for Ling Han was the fact that she did not eat cooked meat. Whether it was grilled or boiled meat, she would not touch a single bite of it if it was put in front of her. Instead, her eyes would fix upon Ling Han's neck, killing intent brimming within her eyes. Obviously, she would be happier to have Ling Han as her feast. To remove her wild nature, the first step was to change her eating habits. Ling Han took a bite of the grilled meat in front of the little girl, then put the grilled meat back down in front of her, then stepped back. Hunyo kept holding herself back from making any moves, but after half a day, her stomach grumbled, and her eyes had become even fiercer. Still, she did not make a move to eat the meat until it was about midnight, and she finally could bear it no longer. She squirmed a bit, and finally took and began to eat the grilled meat. Both her hands and feet were tied, so she could only wriggle forward like a worm. Her appetite was terrifyingly large, she quickly finished off such a huge pork leg. The little girl licked her lips as if she had not eaten enough. The expression on her face was very strange, because she had never eaten such delicious meat. On the second day, Ling Han continued to attend various social gatherings, and on the fourth day, Li Hao and his other old friends finally found the opportunity to meet him. I never thought that you would actually manage to get the first place. Yeah, you are really impressive, too amazing. I am more envious of Li Hao. He's going to enter into Huyang Academy very soon and Big Brother Ling will take care of him there, so there's no fear that he's going to be bullied in an unfamiliar place. Lu Dong and the others talked in succession as they continued to fill his cup with wine, rejecting his own attempts to reciprocate the gesture. Due to their inferior status, they could only wait until the majority of the others had dispersed before they dared to come meet with Ling Han. Today, they naturally came with the intent to get Ling Han drunk. However, when they had about reached half a round of drinks, Chen Pengju revealed a face filled with hesitation. After a long while, he finally spoke, "I may have caused a huge disaster." "What's the matter?" everyone else asked. Chen Pengju clenched his teeth and said, "When we returned from the Balance Mountains, I shared a drink with one of my clansmen. I drank a bit too much, and it seems like I accidentally spoke about the incident with Hang Zhan." "What?" Li Hao and the other four immediately stood, their faces instantly paling. Hang Zhan was the grandson of the seventh elder of Stone Wolf Gate, and recently, people from the Stone Wolf Gate have all been searching for his killer. If the information was leaked out, then that seventh elder from Stone Wolf Gate would definitely come running. A powerful warrior of gushing spring tier. Ling Han did not take it to heart too much. He too had the assistance of warriors of gushing spring tier, and the Stone Wolf Gate should know that there stood 3 black great alchemists behind him, so they definitely would not dare to be rash. Perhaps only that seventh elder may possibly go on a mad rampage. After all, his flesh and blood grandson had died, so it depended on his temper. If he was the fiery, short-tempered type, then it was indeed possible that he would make a murderous charge towards Ling Han. "So did you say something or not?" Lu Dong asked anxiously. Guorok Town fell within the area under the jurisdiction of the Stone Wolf Gate, and the seventh elder had just cause on his side vengeance for his grandson, so even if he massacred their clans, the most the De Yuan king would do was to verbally reprimand him. After all, this was a world where the strongest was respected. "I really can't remember, I really drank too much that day," Chen Pengju said, scowling miserably. Ling Han thought for a moment, then said, "If that person from the Stone Wolf Gate really went charging to your clans, then just be honest and tell him to come look for me." "No, Big Brother Ling, we will definitely not betray you." "That's right, how could we be so disloyal?" Lu Dong and the others all shook their heads in refusal. But were their words true, and how many of them were actually speaking truthfully, that was another matter entirely. Ling Han smiled, and said, "There's no harm, this is the truth anyways. Moreover, I have the ability to protect myself, so I do not fear that seventh elder. But for you guys, I can't guarantee your safety, so listen to me and tell the truth." Seeing Ling Han insist so strongly, Lu Dong and the rest could only nod their heads in agreement while hoping Chen Pengju's tongue had not slipped after drinking. If that was the case, then all would be well. With such a heavy worry weighing down on their hearts, the atmosphere obviously became very stifling, so very soon, the gathering concluded and everyone returned to their own respective homes. When Ling Han returned to the Heaven's Medicine Pavilion, he saw Lu Yutong was teaching Hunyo how to speak. However, the wild girl was still very violent. She did not pay any attention to Lu Yutong's attempts and only kept baring her teeth and snarling, looking very much like a little tiger. Ling Han laughed loudly, and said, "You have to take advantage of her weakness, doesn't the little girl like to eat? So you can just use food as a reward. If she performs well, give it to her, making her slowly learn to obey you." Lu Yutong rolled her eyes at him, and said in annoyance, "You really think it's like raising a kitten or a puppy? This girl is much fiercer than any kitten or puppy." Ling Han said with a click of his tongue. He stretched out a hand to touch Hunyo's head, and the girl immediately tried to bite him, but thankfully, he managed to pull his hand back in time. Ko, 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 a series of knocks was heard from the door. Ling Han and Lu Yutong both turned around to see an alchemist's apprentice standing at the doorway, who said, "Young Master Ling, there arrived someone who claims he is from the Ling clan of Grey Cloud Town outside. He says he has some urgent matter and wishes to meet you." Oh. Ling Han walked out. What could it be? His father had just returned, so logically, there shouldn't be any big issues, right? Could it be the seventh elder of Stone Wolf Gate? Alarm rose in his heart, and he immediately quickened his walk into a run. Seeing this, Lu Yutong left Hunyo behind and quickly followed after. Chapter 80, Comeback of the Cheng Clan. Time slowly turned back to a few days ago. Grey Cloud Town, Cheng Clan residence. An extremely powerful aura suddenly spread out from the deepest parts of the Cheng clan residence. It was a very terrifying aura, so much that an intense feeling of fear rose within the heart of even an elite in the 9th layer of element gathering tier like Cheng Wenkun. Yet Cheng Wenkun did not feel anxious at all. Instead, an overjoyed expression appeared on his face and he actually started to wave his hands and dance around. Third uncle has broken through. Ha ha ha, third uncle has broken through. Ling clan, you people were so arrogant before, but you would never have thought that my third uncle has been in seclusion all this while, breaking through to Gushing Spring tier. His expression turned grim all of a sudden, and he declared, from now onwards, there will be no more Ling clan in Grey Cloud Town. Ha ha ha. A bout of loud laughter was heard, and a thin old man was taking big strides into the main hall. Waves of terrifying power continuously spread out from his body as he approached. This was because he had just broken through, and so had not yet managed to completely control his own power. He was Cheng Wenkun's third uncle, Cheng Jiyu, a martial arts maniac. He was already acclaimed as the top elite martial artist of the whole Cheng clan years ago, yet did not have much interest in having power over the clan. Instead, he had kept himself in seclusion to break through to Gushing Spring tier. Even in their own Cheng clan, many clansmen had all thought that he had long since died. And his hard work had paid off, for he had successfully broken through to Gushing Spring tier. This was the strongest level of existence in the whole of Grey Cloud Town, more than enough to sweep away all opponents with his overwhelming might. Greetings, third uncle. Congratulations, third uncle. Cheng Wenkun half knelt on the ground, his face filled with overwhelming joy. Rise. Cheng Jiyu raised his hand. His eyes turned away from Cheng Wenkun, and he said, "Call Xiao Yuan and the others back. I have not seen them for quite a few years." Third uncle, Xiao Yuan, he's dead. Cheng Wenkun said, choking with grief. What? Cheng Jiyu suddenly slammed a hand onto the table. Peng, this table made of excellent sandalwood instantly turned into broken pieces. His furious eyes widened, and he said, "Who has killed my grandson?" Cheng Xiao Yuan was Cheng Jiyu's direct grandson. He had also inherited the latter's talent, and as a result, was taken in as a disciple by the Stone Wolf sect. Not even Cheng Hao or Cheng Xiang had this kind of talent, that little bastard from the Ling clan, Ling Han. Cheng Wenkun immediately said. Pa! Cheng Jiyu's hand rose and fell quickly, giving Cheng Wenkun a slap. He sneered, "Then what are you doing, still sitting here? Why did you not come see me with the head of that little bastard?" Cheng Wenkun did not dare to have any feelings of anger. In front of a powerful warrior of Gushing Spring tier, he wouldn't be able to raise even a single finger. He quickly knelt and said, "How could I not want to avenge Xiao Yuan? It's just that there is an elder from Stone Wolf sect supporting him, I can't touch him." An elder from Stone Wolf sect? Cheng Jiyu's eyes narrowed slightly. All the elders of Stone Wolf sect were in Gushing Spring tier while he himself had just broken through to this tier. Whoever that elder was, it was impossible he would be able to match him in a battle. But very quickly, he gave a humph and said, "At most, that little bastard must have curried a bit of favor with that elder. Even if I killed him, that elder would never think of declaring a blood feud with me. Let's go. Come with me and we will immediately charge towards the Ling clan residence. Since he dared to kill my grandson, then I will slaughter every clansman of the Ling clan in exchange. Cheng Wen-kun was of course overjoyed. He had been afraid that Cheng Ji-yu would fall back, but thanks to the death of Cheng Xiaoyuan, Cheng Ji-yu was overwhelmed with rage, so much that he had no fear for even an elder of Stone Wolf sect. Practically the whole Cheng clan moved out, all of them bursting with killing intent as they made their way to the Ling clan residence. Moving so pompously through the streets of course attracted the attention of the smaller clans in the town, as they all came out to observe the spectacle. What's the matter with the Cheng clan? Could they be about to start a war with one of the clans? Aside from the Ling clan, what other clan is worthy of such a big movement from the Cheng clan? That can't be true, can it? The power of the Ling clan is practically equal to the power of the Cheng clan, and if a war sparks up between these two great clans, both sides would only suffer. The Cheng clan couldn't be so foolish, right? No, no. Don't you guys know that the Cheng clan is not having a good time lately? I heard that their main source of income has received an all-out suppression from the Ling clan, and now, they can't even afford to pay the salaries of their servants. Yes, yes, yes. I heard about that too. Lately, many of the servants and guards of Cheng clan have all secretly ran off. Are they in such a terrible condition? Then no wonder the Cheng clan is going all out now. Otherwise, they'd be wiped out by the Ling clan in the future. At least, if they made a gamble now, there could be a chance of victory for them. Cheng Wen-kun heard the discussions from around him, and could not stop a cold smile from appearing on his face. Going all out? How could that be? They now had a powerful warrior of gushing spring tear fighting on their side, and they were going to wipe out the Ling clan. Going all out? Only the Ling clan needed to do that, but it would all be pointless effort. One finger of a powerful warrior of gushing spring tear would be enough to suppress all resistance. The Cheng clan advanced like a great flood while the townspeople followed behind them to watch the ensuing show. This was a great battle between the two great clans. If any one of them missed it, they'd definitely regret it for life. Very quickly, they set out from the town's east side and arrived at the west side, which was where the Ling clan residence was located. With such a big commotion, it of course caused a disturbance within the Ling clan. Ling Dongxing had just returned, and he immediately stepped out, with his clansmen behind him. Ling clan head, long time no see, Cheng Wen-kun raised a hand, and all the clansmen of the Cheng clan halted their steps. He smiled at Ling Dongxing, his face filled with smugness because very soon, this old rival of his would be kneeling down in submission in front of him. Ling Dongxing frowned. They had obviously come with bad intentions. He raised his voice and said, "Brother Cheng has brought so many people here, are you here to make a demonstration?" Ha ha ha. Cheng Wen-kun laughed loudly, before suddenly stopping. He said in a deep voice, "That's right, I'm here today to make a demonstration. Ling Dongxing, immediately order the members of your clan to surrender, and I can consider killing a few people less." Cheng Wen-kun, have you gone mad? Ling Dongxing asked coldly. This was a humongous joke. You think I'm joking with you? Cheng Wen-kun laughed coldly. Are you not? Ling Dongxing asked back. Of course not. A cold voice declared. An old man with a tall, thin figure left the ranks of the Cheng clan and passed Cheng Wen-kun by, his face filled with killing intent. Who's this old man? Those who had gathered around to watch the spectacle were all curious about the identity of this mysterious old man. Was there such a person in the Cheng clan? It looks like his status is not beneath Cheng Wen-kun's. I've got it, he's Cheng Ji-yu. An old man suddenly gasped in surprise. Everyone said that he has long died, I never thought he's actually still alive. Ling Dongxing of course recognized Cheng Jiyu, though the latter now looked much older than he had last seen him. He raised his clasped hands in Cheng Jiyu's direction as a sign of respect to someone from the generation before his. But the issue now concerned the pride of the two clans, so naturally, he would not give in easily. He said, if the Cheng clan insists on battle, there is no member of the Ling clan that is afraid of death. Hung, you think you're worthy of standing as an equal with my Cheng clan? Cheng Jiyu stretched out a hand, and pressed down on Ling Dongxing. I'll put you down first. You've gone too far. Ling Dongxing raised his palms in a counterattack. He had been praised as the top genius in the whole of Grey Cloud Town in the past, and so of course possessed exceptional power. As his palms moved, more than 10 images of palm strikes could be seen, and the attacks were extremely fast. How could a firefly be worthy of competing with the moon over which is brighter? Cheng Jiyu's finger extended, and there actually appeared a gigantic palm about the size of a millstone which pressed down on Ling Dongxing. Origin power given form, gushing spring tear. Ling Dongxing gasped in shock, his face immediately turning pale. He finally understood where the Cheng clan got such confidence from. Cheng Jiyu had actually broken through to gushing spring tear. Chapter 81, The Great Calamity of the Ling Clan. The gigantic hand made of origin power clapped down and sure enough, it completely suppressed Ling Dongxing and even sealed his dantian. The current Ling Dongxing was now no stronger than any ordinary person. Ha ha ha. Cheng Wenkun laughed loudly. He felt very well, he was extremely delighted at this long-awaited scene. From the moment he had awakened his spirit base and began his path of cultivation, he had always been compared with Ling Dongxing, but Ling Dongxing's prowess had always exceeded his own and he could only be considered the second best. Fortunately, Ling Dongxing had never managed to break through to gushing spring tear, which gave him a faint ray of hope. And now such a close rival that had always been weighing him down was actually so easily suppressed, how could he not be ecstatic at this? But at the same time, he was also extremely shocked. Gushing spring tear was really too powerful. Cheng Jiyu had just barely broken through and Ling Dongxing was practically defenseless against him. Take all of them down. Whoever dares to resist, kill them with no exceptions. He commanded coldly, and with a wave of his hand, all the martial artists of the Cheng clan behind him charged towards the Ling clan, moving forwards in a very imposing manner. On the other hand, the Ling clan, due to the suppression of their clan head, as well as the fact that the opposing party had a powerful warrior of gushing spring tear on their side, suffered a drastic decrease in their morale, so they couldn't put up any efficient resistance. There were a few clansmen in Element Gathering Tier who had attempted to flee, yet all of them were chased down by Cheng Jiyu, and with a palm strike, they were all beaten half to death. I never thought that the Cheng clan actually still had a powerful warrior of gushing spring tear as their trump card. He should have just broken through recently, otherwise, they wouldn't have waited until now to make their comeback. The saying that every dog has its day is really true. Who would have thought that the Cheng clan would actually be able to make a gigantic comeback out of nowhere precisely when they were forced into such dire straits? According to the temperament of the clansmen of the Cheng clan, I'm afraid that no one from the Ling clan would be able to escape with their lives. The Cheng clan will be in charge of the town in the future, and our days probably wouldn't be easy after this. All of the spectators were astonished at the might of Cheng Jiyu, but could also not help sighing and shaking their heads. All of the people of the Cheng clan were arrogant and overbearing, and in the future where their clan was the one in charge, the townspeople would probably be having hard times ahead of them. Less than half an hour later, all of the clansmen of the Ling clan were practically taken down. There were only a mere several clansmen who had businesses outside of the Ling clan main residence that had fortunately escaped this calamity temporarily. Where is Ling Han? Cheng Jiyu approached Ling Dongxing, killing intent brimming in his eyes. He had commanded the others to search for Ling Han, yet the latter could not be found anywhere in the Ling clan residence. Ha ha ha. Ling Dongxing laughed loudly. My son has already been taken as a disciple by the Huyang Academy. If you people dare to touch a single hair on his head, that would be equivalent to declaring war on the imperial family of Rain Country. Cheng Wen-kun walked over, and said, that trash son of yours entering Huyang Academy? Who are you trying to fool? Ling Dongxing spat and said, my son not only is going to enter Huyang Academy, he's also the first-place champion of this time's De Yuan tournament. In future, he'd at least manage to break through to spiritual ocean tier, so just wait. Nonsense. Cheng Wen-kun scoffed, that trash son of yours dreams of taking the first place in De Yuan tournament? Ling Dongxing, you really like to indulge in fantasies to actually use such a hilarious story to attempt to fool us. Actually, if he had said that Ling Han was able to enter into Huyang Academy, Cheng Wen-kun would still have believed him. After all, Cheng Xiao Yuan was defeated by Ling Han, but now he's saying that Ling Han got the first place? What a gigantic joke. This time's De Yuan tournament was the gathering place of geniuses. There were powerful warriors from the previous De Yuan tournament like the Fourth Prince and Jin Wuji, as well as new talents like Bailey Tengyun and Xia Zhongguang. How could Ling Han be able to win? So what if he has been accepted by the Huyang Academy? As long as he has not stepped into the Huyang Academy, he cannot be considered as a disciple of Huyang Academy. Cheng Wen-kun's killing intent soared, and then he spoke to Cheng Jiyu, third uncle, why don't we hang them all up at the entrance to the town and wait until Ling Han, that little beast, returns, then kill all of them? Very well, we'll do that. I want to scoop out the heart and dig out the lungs of that little bastard, Ling Han, in front of him and make him also have a taste of losing his own flesh and blood. Cheng Jiyu coldly humphed. We only need to leave about 10 plus of them alive, as for the others, kill them all. Cheng Wen-kun said deeply. Cheng Wen-kun, you dare? Ling Dongxing roared. The clansmen of the Ling clan alone numbered a few hundred, and added with their servants and guards, those that did not share their surname, the total reached over 1,000. And now only about 10 plus would be left alive, so how many people would be killed? Why do I not dare? Cheng Wen-kun laughed coldly. This was establishing the might of the Cheng clan, sacrificing the lives of the clansmen of the Ling clan to let the townspeople of Grey Cloud Town know that this would be the inevitable result when opposing their Cheng clan. Kill them! He shouted loudly. Pu, one by one, their heads were chopped off with no exceptions. It was a complete bloodbath, and corpses lay everywhere. Not every clansman of the Ling clan was unafraid of death. Many of them had begged for mercy, but it was pointless. The Qing clan was determined to wipe the Ling clan out of existence, and had absolutely no intention to accept surrender. There was only slaughter, which transformed the whole Ling clan residence into a realm of death. When Ling Dongxing watched all this happen before his eyes, he felt like it was him that was being torn apart. All of these people were his clansmen, and as the clan head, how could his heart not be bleeding at this horrific scene? But he was still more worried about his son. If Ling Han returned, what if he fell into the hands of the Cheng clan? Though Ling Han had an affable relationship with quite a few black-grade alchemists, the problem was, would the Cheng clan believe him? Moreover, the news that Ling Han had won the first-place champion of the De Yuan tournament had not yet spread to these parts, so the Cheng clan would naturally not have any worries about attacking his son. If his son died, then even if he himself died, how could he bear to face his wife? His heart was burning with anxiety, yet there was nothing he could do. The remaining 10+ survivors of the Ling clan were dragged to the east entrance of the town, where 10+ short wooden pillars had been set up. Ling Dongxing and the others all had had their dantian sealed, and all of them were forced to kneel on the ground, their hands and feet tied to the wooden pillars. Wu, big brother de Xiong. Ling Zixian wept bitterly. She was one of the few survivors, yet maybe not one of the fortunate. Pa! One of the clansmen of the Qing clan gave her a slap, and shouted, "Stop crying." Yet Ling Zixian wept even louder, enraging him, and he quickly drew the saber at his waist. "Forget it, forget it." Someone persuaded him. Perhaps it was due to the fact that Ling Zixian was really too young, causing mercy to rise within him. Just let her cry as much as she likes, we can use that as a show of deterrence. This is the fate that awaits anyone who dares to oppose our Qing clan. Hee hee. What clan head, you're still trampled under my feet now. One of them stepped on Ling Dongxing's head. He even deliberately smeared the dirt on his shoe onto Ling Dongxing's face, causing Ling Dongxing to tremble with rage. Haha, so what if you're in the 9th layer of element gathering tier? Now even a mere 6th layer of body refining tier can easily trample on you. Ling clan is finished. Now, the Grey Cloud Town belongs to our Qing clan. The night passed. The 10+ remaining survivors of the Ling clan were all shivering as they suffered from the cold, so much that even ice had formed on their hair ends. Moreover, after nearly a day without any food or water, their stomachs were all rumbling with hunger. Cheng Wen-kun appeared. He wanted to see as every bit of hope slowly disappeared from the eyes of his longtime rival, and finally see as he'd be flung into absolute despair after seeing his only son die in front of his very eyes. It would only be at that moment that he would kill Ling Dongxing, and finally end the rivalry that had persisted between them for more than 30 years. Ling Dongxing, are you regretting it yet? He mocked and ridiculed. Only when he was satisfied would he leave, and the next day, he would appear again punctually to continue making fun of this former rival of his. In the blink of an eye, 3 days had passed. Ling Dongxing and the others were all left barely alive. After a whole 3 days without any food, if they had not been fed water, they would definitely have died from dehydration. But they were currently extremely weak, so much that they didn't even have the energy to curse at their captors. Report. A man raced over, half kneeling on the ground, he said, informing the clan head, "We've discovered signs of Ling Han, he's about 50 miles away from the town." Ha ha ha. Cheng Wen-kun was stunned for a moment, before laughing loudly. With a wave of his hand, he commanded, "Quickly go and fetch third uncle. He will soon be able to have his revenge." Chapter 82, The Violent Fury of Ling Han. Ling Han raced out, and very quickly arrived at the room the Heaven's Medicine Pavilion had arranged for receiving guests. This room would usually only be used by the bigger customers of Heaven's Medicine Pavilion, but because Ling Han's status was a bit unique, his visitor had also been brought here. He pushed the door open and entered, immediately asking, "What's happened at the clan?" There was a middle-aged man who had been continuously pacing to and fro inside, and when he saw Ling Han, he immediately rushed towards him like an arrow shot from a bow. "Uncle Yang Ping." Ling Han recognized his visitor. He was a member of one of the branch families of the Ling clan. "Young Master Han." Ling Yangping's fiery eyes immediately brimmed with tears as he spoke, his voice choking with insurmountable grief. "Our Ling clan, has been destroyed by the Qing clan." "Qing clan?" Ling Han said quickly, "Uncle Yangping, calm down first and slowly explain. What exactly happened?" Ling Yangping regained his composure a bit, before he once again began to speak, though his hands were still shaking. "There's an ancient monster in the Qing clan, called Qing Jiyu. Everyone said he'd already died long ago, but we never imagined that he had actually been in seclusion all this while. A few days ago, he broke through to Gushing Spring Tier. The moment he had broken through, he immediately led the Qing clan and charged towards our clan, killing almost every member of the clan." Quang, this news was like a bolt out of the blue. All of a sudden, Ling Han could only feel his sight darken as he very nearly passed out from such a blow. Fortunately, Lu Yutong acted in time and held onto him in support. Otherwise, he'd definitely have fallen in a dead faint onto the ground. He forcibly calmed himself and asked, "What about my father?" Clan head was apprehended by Qing Jiyu and is now being tied up at the town entrance, left to suffer from the elements, baked by the sun, pounded by the rain, and freezing as the weather turns cold. Qing Jiyu has declared that he would kill you in front of our clan head when you return before killing all the other survivors. Ling Yongping raged, "I was off on an errand out of town when this happened, and thus fortunately escaped this disaster. Once I got news of it, I immediately rushed here. Young Master Han, you must not act rashly, or you would definitely fall into the trap laid by the Qing clan. They are currently waiting for you to come walking right into their trap." Ling Yongping was naturally filled with anxiety. From the moment he entered De Yuan City, he had already heard of how Ling Han had won the first place in this year's De Yuan tournament, defeating geniuses such as Fourth Prince and Jin Wuji. This meant that Ling Han's future was filled with unlimited possibilities. As long as he managed to survive to see the age of 30, he would definitely be able to become a powerful warrior of gushing spring tier. He was of course afraid that Ling Han would act rashly. Ling Han was a young man after all, and young men were always impetuous and easily gave in to emotions. After finding out that his own father was currently being held captive, his first reaction would of course be to rescue him without knowing that this would only cause him to lose his own life and bring a true end to the last hopes of the Ling clan. "I understand. Please don't worry, Uncle Yongping. I know my own limits." Once he found out his father had not died yet, Ling Han's heart calmed, yet how could he just stay there without making any move at all? Forced to kneel at the town entrance, suffering all manner of hardship due to the weather, and watched by others like some kind of show. Was this how a human being should be treated? Moreover, even if a martial artist of element gathering tier possessed a strong life force and vitality, without food and water, he would not last much longer than a normal person. The maximum amount of time he would be able to hold on for would be 5 or 6 days, and then he'd definitely die. He had to act immediately. After calling Lu Yutong to accompany him, the two of them immediately set out, rushing back to Grey Cloud Town. Gushing Spring Tier? If his opponent had broken through to Gushing Spring Tier a long time ago and possessed the battle prowess of someone in the second or third layer of Gushing Spring Tier, then he may still feel afraid. But Qing Jiyu had only just broken through with his current prowess, he felt that there was no need to fear. Furthermore, the Black Tower in his Dantian afforded him a single chance to increase his cultivation level by a complete tier, allowing his cultivation level to instantly zoom up to the 4th layer of Gushing Spring Tier. Lu Yutong brought Hunyo with them, and the group of 3, riding on 2 horses, raced back toward Grey Cloud Town. However, as she did not know that Ling Han possessed a blessing from the Black Tower, she naturally informed Zhu Hexian and Zhang Wei Shan of the happenings in Grey Cloud Town. The 2 old men had been in the process of attempting to concoct the reverse pill. When he heard the news, Zhu Hexian was instantly enraged. In his heart, he considered Ling Han to be half his master, and now his master's father was suffering such humiliation at the hands of his enemies, waiting to be killed. How could he not be furious? He was not the only one furious. Zhang Wei Shan was also extremely furious. He owed Ling Han a debt of gratitude and had been troubled about being unable to repay this debt. He had immediately set out together with Zhu Hexian. These 2 black-grade alchemists immediately set off, and this piece of news, as if it had suddenly sprouted wings, spread to every corner of De Yuan City. What? Ling Han's father has been captured by the Qing clan, waiting to be executed together with Ling Han after the latter returns? What kind of clan is this Qing clan? They're really too bold, aren't they? Ah, the Qing clan is actually just a minor clan, and only recently did one of their clansmen break through to Gushing Spring Tier? Go, go, go. Immediately make arrangements to assist Ling Han in his rescue effort. This is a wonderful opportunity, we'd be able to form a friendly relationship with a future ruler. Ha ha ha, this is really a godsend of an opportunity. With barely sacrificing anything in return, we'd be able to form a good relationship with Ling Han. Immediately form a group and follow me to Grey Cloud Town. When all the great clans of the city heard the news, they were both shocked and overjoyed. Their shock was due to the audacity and boldness of the Chen clan, while their joy was because an excellent opportunity to form a close relationship with Ling Han had fallen into their laps. Just think, they sent their people to help Ling Han rescue his father. How big would this debt of gratitude be? Let us quickly set out, and head towards Grey Cloud Town. Any clan that had a powerful warrior of gushing spring tier immediately set out at the first available opportunity. They all wanted to be the first person to rescue Ling Dongxing from his captivity. The magnitude of such a debt would be enough for Ling Han to use his whole lifetime to repay them. Because of the panic Ling Han was experiencing, they did not stop at any moment on the journey to rest. Thankfully, their mounts were Blackfoot horses, which possessed a strand of demonic beast blood. Otherwise, normal horses would definitely have died from exhaustion on the way. After a mere half-day's journey, Grey Cloud Town had already come into sight. From afar, Ling Han could already see that there were over 10 people kneeling at the town entrance, and the one in the very middle, wasn't that just Ling Dongxing? Father! He shouted loudly, his tone filled with immeasurable rage. Ha ha ha, this little bastard had really dared to return. Cheng Wen-kun laughed loudly, raising his right foot to step on Ling Dongxing's face, and said, "All right, I admit it now. You truly have a good son. He clearly knows that it is dangerous, but still returned to die." He of course did not mean it as a compliment. He only wanted to make things worse for Ling Dongxing. After nearly 4 days without food, Ling Dongxing's sight had become blurry from hunger, so he couldn't see Ling Han, who was some distance away from town. He only had the vague feeling that he might have heard Ling Han's voice. He opened his mouth, and in a weak voice, said, "Honor, run. Run quickly. Don't waste your energy. He can't even hear you." Cheng Wen-kun stepped on Ling Dongxing's face, and even deliberately ground his foot in, a malevolent expression on his face. His limited patience had long been exhausted through the last few days, and he could not wait to slaughter this pair of father and son. "Old dog, you're looking for death." Ling Han urged his horse into a gallop and arrived. He leaped off his horse. Shua, his sword was drawn from its sheath, immediately sweeping towards Cheng Wen-kun. Shua, 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 5 flashes of sword chi appeared in a dance. Due to his towering rage, Ling Han actually underwent a breakthrough, and stepped into the level of having 5 flashes of sword chi. What? Cheng Wen-kun was flabbergasted. There actually appeared 5 flashes of sword chi in front of his eyes. He hurriedly put up his hands to parry the incoming blow, but Ling Han's attack was filled with his fury, so of course, he had done his very best. Added with the 5 flashes of sword chi, what magnitude of power was that? Ah! Cheng Wen-kun released a horrible scream. Only one strike was enough to fling him away, and blood splattered from his body. Pang! He fell on the ground. He hadn't even managed to get up and a foot had descended from above, ruthlessly stepping down on his face. Cheng Wen-kun suddenly felt as if he had charged at full speed and crashed into a boulder, as if his head would be bursting at any moment. With a "ka," his nose was broken, and he had lost about 4 or 5 teeth, his face completely covered with blood. "You dare to humiliate my father, I will make you experience living hell," Ling Han said in a deep voice. This time, he was really enraged. Chapter 83, How Do You Want to Die? Ta, 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 ta. The sound of racing hooves was heard, and Zhu He-xian and Zhang Wei-shan had also arrived, just moments behind them. Their arrival caused Lu Yutong to feel greatly relieved. She jumped off her own horse and began to set free Ling Dongxing and the others so that Ling Han would not have anything to worry about. "Father, quick, swallow this Protect Origin pill." Ling Han took out a pill bottle, and from within, he took out a green-colored pill before feeding it to Ling Dongxing. Ling Dongxing had no special feelings about this. Since it was his son giving it to him, he'd just swallow it obediently. But Zhu Hexian and Zhang Weishan had both widened their eyes in shock, for this Protect Origin pill was also an alchemical pill that had been lost in the passage of time, and its effects were even better than the reverse pill. Although the reverse pill had a very powerful name, but compared to the Protect Origin pill, to put it simply, there was actually a very big gap between the two. Both these pills were yellow-grade mid-level alchemical pills, but they were very difficult to concoct. See, Zhu Hexian and Zhang Weishan had already obtained the complete pill formula long ago, yet had not yet concocted the reverse pill even after so many days of hard work. Yet Ling Han had now taken out a Protect Origin pill, an alchemical pill that was even more difficult to concoct. How could the two of them not be utterly astonished at this? Ling Han handed a Protect Origin pill to the remaining 10+ survivors of the Ling clan. This Protect Origin pill was the result of his efforts to improve upon the basic reverse pill, so of course, its effects were even better. Big brother Han, De Xiong is dead. Daddy and Mommy are dead too, woo, woo woo. Ling Zixian wept, as she lay weakly in Ling Han's arms. However, no tears fell from her eyes, for her tears had long dried up. "I will avenge De Xiong, I will avenge everyone." Ling Han lightly rubbed the little girl's back, and said, Xian, be good. Go to sleep, and when you wake up, everything will be better." The little girl nodded. After the suffering that she had experienced these 4 days, she had long reached her limits, and very soon fell asleep in Ling Han's arms. Ling Han handed the little girl over to Lu Yutong before his eyes returned to Cheng Wenkun, killing intent burning in them. Although Hunyo had been tied up and bundled onto the saddle, lying on her side, as she had grown up at the side of a fierce tiger since very young, she was extremely sensitive towards killing intent. She suddenly raised her head and a ho, ho, ho sound came from her mouth. She was obviously very excited. How is this possible? How could you possibly manage to form 5 flashes of sword chi? Cheng Wenkun got to his feet after much struggle. His nose had been flattened, one side of his mouth was bent out of shape, and his face was completely covered with blood. "How do you want to die?" Ling Han said in a deep voice, "Would you like to be torn limb from limb or dismembered, or perhaps have your head shattered? I will allow you the chance to choose your own death. Little bastard, don't you be arrogant. Even if you have formed 5 flashes of sword chi, it's useless. In front of absolute power, your only end would still be death." Cheng Wenkun taunted. "When my 3rd uncle arrives, all of you will die." Ling Han shook his head, and said, "When I heard you say this, I really thought that I was facing a profligate, spoiled young master in his teens who only knows how to use the adults of his clan as a threat and scare tactic. Humph, when that old creature arrives, I will naturally cut off his dog head." "Nonsense, ah!" Cheng Wenkun screamed painfully. He was once again kicked down to the ground by Ling Han. He was filled with immeasurable rage and humiliation. To have another person step on his face was the most humiliating thing in the world, and the one who had stepped on him was furthermore his sworn enemy's son. It was already enough that he could not defeat Ling Dongxing, but now even Ling Dongxing's son had the ability to step on his face. How could he bear such a thing? And at this moment, the townspeople had all come out to watch the oncoming show after hearing the news, and those who lived nearer had all arrived. When they saw Ling Han, with an awe-inspiring presence and stepping on Cheng Wenkun's face, it was as if everyone had turned into stone. Before the appearance of Cheng Jiyu, everyone in Grey Cloud Town had recognized Ling Dongxing and Cheng Wenkun as the strongest elite martial artists of the town, both being in the 9th layer of element gathering tier, with no one else being a match for either of them. And now this person, who had once been recognized as the strongest of them all, was actually stepped on by Ling Han. How could any one of them believe their own eyes? Ling Han had once possessed the grand reputation of being trash of the worst quality. Many of the disciples of Grey Cloud Academy recalled the words that Lu Yutong had once spoken. After 3 months, Ling Han would become an existence that everyone could only look up to. Indeed, he was now even able to step on Cheng Wen-kun. Whom amongst them would not look up to him? But the problem now was, the strongest warrior in Grey Cloud Town was Cheng Jiyu, an elite martial artist of Gushing Spring tier. No matter how powerful Ling Han was, how could he be more powerful than Gushing Spring tier? He's done for. Once Cheng Jiyu arrives, Ling Han would definitely be finished. It's really too bad for a genius of his caliber. Otherwise, he may even be able to become a powerful warrior of Spiritual Ocean tier in the future. Spiritual Ocean tier, you really dare to say that? That would mean being as strong as the De Yuan King. Think about it, Ling Han is only 17 years old now, but he is already able to step on Cheng Wen-kun like this. How scary is his talent? That's true. The spectators all murmured to each other. All of them were not optimistic about Ling Han, thinking that he had come back to surrender to his death. The formidable prowess of Gushing Spring tier was embedded deep in the bones of all of them, especially in a small town like Grey Cloud Town. For them, a warrior of Gushing Spring tier could practically be considered a god. Hung. It was at this moment that a figure flew out from the town. The figure was moving extremely fast, even the speed of a galloping horse could not match its speed. Within a mere instant, the figure had already appeared at a near distance. It was Cheng Jiyu. Little bastard, so you are Ling Han? That evil fiend that has killed my grandson? Cheng Jiyu's eyes were fixed upon Ling Han, his stare as intense as if he wanted to devour Ling Han. I am Ling Han, and today will be the day of your death. Ling Han replied in kind. Ha ha ha, I am a powerful warrior of Gushing Spring tier. What ability do you have to take my life? Cheng Jiyu did not feel in a rush to act. This was the chief culprit who had killed his grandson. He wanted to slowly torture this little bastard to death. And if we fight too? Zhu Hixing and Zhang Weishan both stepped forwards. And who the heck are you, Cheng Jiyu was initially indifferent, but when his eyes fell upon the two people who had spoken, his expression suddenly changed and he gasped in shock, Gushing Spring tier. Not just Gushing Spring tier, but there were two of such powerful warriors in front of his eyes. What? The townspeople all gasped in shock. These two ordinary-looking old men were actually also powerful warriors of Gushing Spring tier? Hiss, no wonder Ling Han dared to return. So he had actually obtained the assistance of two such elites of Gushing Spring tier. Cheng Jiyu's face turned serious. He no longer had any intention of underestimating these two men, and said, My two brothers, this brat has killed my grandson. No matter what benefits he has promised you, I will offer you double the amount, so please do not interfere. Zhu Hixing and Zhang Weishan exchanged a look, before bursting into laughter simultaneously. Offer them double the amount? Who the fuck do you think you are? How many pill formulae do you have in your possession, and how much understanding do you have in the field of alchemy that you actually dare to make such an overly exaggerated promise? How dare you? Young friend Ling's problem is also our problem. Zhang Weishan said, Cheng, if you surrender, I can promise to beg for a bit of mercy from young friend Ling on your behalf, and grant you a swift death. Young friend Ling? See. Everyone either sucked air in abruptly between their bared teeth or gasped. These two powerful warriors of Gushing Spring tier actually addressed Ling Han, young friend, and completely appeared as if they were willing to share all of Ling Han's burdens with him. What kind of relationship was this? Fortunately, neither Zhu He Xian or Zhang Wei Shan had worn the badges that proved their alchemist identity, or these townspeople would be even more astonished, for black-grade low-level alchemists possessed an even higher status than powerful warriors of Gushing Spring tier. "Must the two of you do this?" Cheng Ji said in a deep voice. He had just broken through to Gushing Spring tier, so his confidence level was off the charts. Moreover, he definitely did not believe that these two powerful warriors of Gushing Spring tier would go all out for Ling Han. He could not think of anything that would cause them to do such a thing. Pung, 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 pung. From a distance away, dirt and soil was flying in all directions as a group of riders was quickly making its way over. "Brother Ling, I've brought my people to give you a hand." A young man jumped off his horse and said to Ling Han, raising his clasped hands in the latter's direction. His group of riders had very quickly arrived nearby. It was Bailey Tengyun. You're tuning into the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.